All right. All right. We are live, I believe. Ashton, did we do this right? I don't know.
I hope so, Pat. It looks good on my side here. It says live in the top left. The numbers are going up.
Okay.
So it's awesome.
We are
People in the
live.
chat
All
seem
right.
excited.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are excited to talk to you, man. We did our interview and I got to ask all the questions. And, I thought we would save questions from the audience for something like this rather than me trying to word those myself. That never comes out right. Plus, I always forget. One time I had a guest on, Michael Ian Black, and I took all these questions, and I only asked two of them.
I used
I
to watch
asked
him
two
on Comedy
questions.
Central and some of the shows. He's done several shows, I think. He's really
Oh,
funny.
dude, yeah, I'm a huge fan of that guy. He's so fun, and he really is funny in person too. So,
Yeah, and
well,
I think
yeah,
that it's nice to like have in this setting we can people can ask whatever's on their mind in general. I'm trying to be as much of an open book as I can about my opinions on everything out there, and I think that people are excited about that, and then what the possibilities may lie with some of this stuff, and hopefully people will kind of understand that I'm just some normal guy that's trying to I'm going through my own journey of discovery and all of this, and people can take whatever pieces of information that come out of this and either validate their own experiences or they don't just want to dismiss it too. That's totally fine. It doesn't hurt me at all.
sure. Yeah, no, couldn't agree more, man. People do this stuff on their own, right? In their own time. They just don't put on YouTube or Twitter, right? They do their own research and investigation, just like you've done, but you've managed to bring a whole community together. So yeah, I'm excited to be able to
Cool.
First of all, let me just say props to you, dude, for willing to just take any question. Just come on. You know what I mean? You're just willing to answer any question. That I have a lot of respect for that, because a lot of people will not do that. Not that there's going to be some crazy questions, but just that you're open, you're willing to talk. You got like, let's go, right? So I love that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I just
right.
want to comment on that too, because definitely, I think there's a lot of people, especially we're in this UFO community. There's a lot of people that are very selective about who they talk to, what questions they answer, and I'm sure you see it because you do daily videos, but you get a lot of the same information repeated over and over, repackaged, etc. For me, it's like there's so much to go over. I want to know what the people want to hear. I want to have like a free flow conversation. I want people to realize this isn't scripted or anything like that. Just giving people the benefit of my thoughts. And I'm certainly no expert in, UFOlogy or even advanced technology, but I think it's really interesting to see how someone who came from the side of knowing nothing about it, like how you kind of glean information from it, what you think is real or not real out there, and how you go through that process. So it'll be sweet.
Well said, man. Well said, brother. So yeah, so hello, vetters out there. Our goal today is to let me look at the camera here. That's what I'm used to doing. Our goal today is to ask Ashton some questions about the videos, and if we can, based off our interview that we did. But of course, any questions that you want to ask, I asked that you put them in all caps. That's going to make it easier for me because I'm going to grab the questions and put them on the screen. And then Ashton's going to try to answer them off of that. Of course, keep it respectful. We're all adults here. Hope I don't have to say that. And thank you to the mods who have jumped in for a very special presentation from Vetted. This is like, I think the only time ever I've done like 2 videos in a day. So I released my normal video and then we're doing a live stream. I've never done that. So Ashton, you're a special guy. This,
Thanks,
right?
Bettis. Yeah, you too, man. I'm glad because the one thing too is that from my growth and all of this, like I really want to help give back to the people who I think are the genuine people who are looking into the subject, trying to find the truth out there. And I've seen some of your episodes and shows, and I like the stuff that you're doing. So if anyone out there isn't following Vetted, make sure you are. People can really get built up to becoming huge podcasters through this type of stuff, and I think that there'll be good stuff embedded in Pat's future here.
Appreciate that, Ashton. Absolutely. I look forward to your interviews as well. Just keep them just like Sarfati's. You just keep doing them like that, and you're good to go.
I still got to clip some of that. The Sarfati thing was like, my dude,
wow, greatest thing ever I've
he was
ever
sitting
seen.
there like, oh,
life.
this is. He's like, you're like Tucker Carlson talking when he was talking to Putin. I'm like, yes, that's exactly how I feel right now talking to you, where you're trying to telling me like the whole history of your whole life, and I'm like, dude, I just want to hear
Uh,
opinions on UFO topic.
dude, it was
But too
great.
funny.
No, yeah, no, but you handled it, like I said, you handled it great.
Yeah.
Look, let's just start
Okay.
with this question here. Again, we're talking about the MH370 videos, Malaysia Airlines flight, March 8th, 2014. It went missing. Am I getting that date
Yeah.
right? Okay.
2000. Yeah, March 8th, 2014. Yep.
Okay. All right. This is Hamilton Johnson. Where do you think the plane went?
Oh, yeah, that's the big question on everyone's mind. Where did this plane end up going? If the theory that I posted out there, this is like a warp event or teleportation event, where did it go? The first thing I would say is that that's probably the reason why this is some type of warp or teleportation event and not an annihilation event. Is that when you look at the videos, when you look at all the evidence around the plane and what happened, you realize that if they wanted to take out the plane, there's way easier ways to do it. Even they could just
Yeah.
let the plane crash at that point. I mean, it was on fire and it looked like it was landing in the videos, and Catherine T saw it. You just let it crash, and everyone's going to die. I know that sounds morbid, but that's the truth. So to me, early on, I thought, well, you would do this to hide the plane. You want to not tell people where it's going to appear, because we know that Russia, China, everybody's got satellites in the sky. So maybe they see it disappear, but how do they tell where it shows up? That becomes a lot more difficult. So the reason why I think this plane went to Diego Garcia military base, first, is that that's where all the other conspiracies out there essentially said this plane went. And not just like random conspiracies on the internet, but like people like Mark Dugain, who's like a famous author who dug into the case and several months later said, thought the United States government somehow took this plane and went to Diego Garcia and was supposedly told to stop talking about it. Stuff like that are the ones that are really compelling to me. And when you look up that base, it's in the middle of the Indian Ocean in a secluded area. Planes can't land there. So it's the exact right place to hide the plane. The problem with it going to like Russia, like Jeff Wise says, is that you're going to have so many radars are going to see it. And they're not all allied with the United States. Even to cover up and hide like Malaysia, Thailand, India, and Australia, which are all the countries that should have seen it, in addition to Indonesia, you'd have to have a lot of influence. And the United States has a lot of influence over those countries. But to like somehow hide it going to Russia, where you have another dozen countries that aren't affiliated with the United States, and hide it there. Either we would have like exposed Russia if they had done that, or they would have exposed us more broadly if we had done that. So this is part of the reasons. But there's also actual evidence. So you have a B777 fire suppression device actually gets reported on as a bomb because it looks like a cartoon bomb, but it would have had to been empty to float. If it was full, it would have sank to the bottom of the ocean. But this thing washed up in the Maldives, which is the right location. If the plane was flying south to Diego Garcia, that's where you'd expect it to wash up, like a week, 2 weeks later, something like that, and never gets looked into at all.
Yeah.
There's 20 islanders on a little island that's just like, I don't know, 100 miles north of Diego Garcia that all see the plane. They see the plane so clearly flying low that they can see the red and white stripe of Malaysian Airlines on it. And the reason why the experts dismissed this was that they thought, well, the direction of travel, Sergio Calduvo went out there and talked to a lot of these people. I have posted clips from it. These people definitely saw an airplane. And like some people try to say, oh, is this other plane, and make this fake route that doesn't exist to argue how they could have seen the other plane. But the red and white stripe of Malaysia Airlines is very unique to that plane. And these people don't see jumbo jets very often. They're on an island of 3,000 people.
Sure.
So 20 different people see it. They see it flying south to Diego Garcia. But then you also have the Philip Wood EXIF data picture. So there's a lot of people out there when we talk about some of the debunks, like especially the cloud debunk, they say, well, the supposed cloud image has metadata in it that says that it was taken on an airplane from 2012, and there's these clouds that match the satellite video. And the counter to that is that metadata can be easily faked, like very, very easily faked. And this was the exact argument debunkers used on the Philip Wood picture. So a week after the plane went missing, Philip Wood, the only adult American passenger, posts a picture on 4chan of just a black picture claiming that he's been drugged and he's held prisoner somewhere.
Yeah.
And this is before people even knew what Diego Garcia was. And like no one on earth basically had any idea what Diego Garcia was in 2014. And then they look at the EXIF data, and the EXIF data points to Diego Garcia. And then we find out as well that Diego Garcia is a CIA black ops site where they would store, terrorists that they were transporting from like Afghanistan, Syria, etc. So there's presumably some type of jail system down there as well. So the debunkers have said, oh, well, that picture must be fake. I think even Mick West did an analysis that early on, back in like October, I found his analysis on Metabunk, claimed that there was some proof that it couldn't be real on the metadata. And then I found a counter where somebody had gone conclusively point by point and shown that, nope, that is consistent with an iPhone 5 from the Picasso application, and that every single one of Mick West's points were false, other than his subjective opinion. So to me, it's like you can't have it both ways. Either, metadata can easily be faked or it's not. And, if metadata is not easily faked, and we say that the cloud picture is an authentic picture, then I can easily counter and say, well, the Philip Wood picture then shows metadata as well that could be a 100% authentic. So this is where, like, there's a lot of push and pull, where, again, like, I don't want to tell people what to believe, but this case is not as cut and dry as, oh, this is debunked or not debunked.
No, I agree with you there, which is why, I've come around myself and wanted to talk about this myself. So look, Ashton, let's do this, because we're going to do a live stream. Let's try to answer the questions a little quicker, and we'll go through, and we can kind of spread it out at the end. You know what I mean? Just to get through some of this.
Okay, so let's just do some more rapid fire. And I've got a list over here. So if people are worried that they haven't seen it, or that we're not seeing the questions, I've been pulling
we'll get to it.
So we'll try to get
right on. So this is Mark. He says, please explain what you think the physics are of the orbs. Great question, Mark.
Yeah, so physics, I think that comes down to scalar physics. Look into Thomas Bearden. It's this idea that you can cancel out a wave. The longitudinal wave is a wave that goes like this. A transverse wave is. And if you have a perfect opposite wave, this is phase conjugation, cancels it out. You would think there's nothing left, but actually you get something left called a scalar wave, or scalar potential. And if you transmit that scalar wave and interfere it with another one, like a cross pattern, this is where then you can have either this endothermic event, this absorption of energy, depending on which way you, I don't know if it's polarized is the right term, or you can have an exothermic event. So this actually gives rise to directed energy weapons, but also stuff like we see where you can be pulling the energy from one place, and it's not just going nowhere. You've got to have the energy go somewhere else. So then this is the idea of teleporting, have the energy go from this place over here to this place over here, and then poof, now it's over in this other location. So that's the short answer on that. We can go more into the science later on.
Yeah, great answer, man. This is Chief Houdini, sorry, says, Ashton, do you have any personal UFO experiences?
I do not. So I'm probably one of the only people in the UFO community who's I've never seen a UFO. I'm not an experiencer.
I don't either. You're not alone.
But the thing is, that doesn't mean I don't believe the stuff's real, because whether or not I've seen it personally doesn't matter. To me, it's the body of evidence that comes along with it. And that kind of, I think, speaks to the MH370 case, where it's like I'm not committed to believing this stuff is true because I had some personal thing going on. It's just going through the evidence and digging through it.
Yeah, great question. Or great answer. Sorry. This is Dino, says, how did one pilot subdue 239 people without a fight?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that works against this pilot suicide narrative. They argue that the argument out there is that he locked the co-pilot and all the crew out, and then he depressurized the plane, flew the plane very high so that people would come from hypoxia very quickly. That somehow the masks, I guess, on board the plane weren't long enough. Although the masks should last like 20 or 30 minutes. And that they also argue, which I don't think this has been proven, it has been claimed that they had a reinforced door, because those old doors you could just kick down. And then after 9/11, they started installing stronger doors. But actually, there's several ways to get through the door. I researched this heavily, especially after the Julian Dory podcast, where he came down on me hard about this. And you can get in through the electronics bay. You can actually disable the electronics from the electronics bay. You can, when the plane depressurizes, if there's an if it's not same pressurization in the cockpit as the passenger, there's panels that pop out. So you can imagine you could punch through the panels and get in there. And then there's actually an override, a secret override that not a lot of people know about, where if you're on the outside, you can punch in a code, and then the person who's flying actually has to consistently deny it in order to not allow them to get in. So there's actually several ways to get in there. And I think it's insane that people think that you can completely lock them out. Although the Germanwings pilot did that in 2015. He locked out the co-pilot, and that's why everyone assumes that's what they did here. But that pilot crashed the plane in 9 minutes. It's a big different story to say that, somehow they asphyxiated everybody and nobody was able to get in, and they went on an 8-hour joyride.
Yeah, you're right. That's a lot there. This is Mike F. says, what system took the video?
Great question.
I guess.
So the first one, Yeah, let's start with the drone video. MQ-1C Gray Eagle. We are like 99% sure it's an MQ-1C Gray Eagle. It could also be an MQ-9 Reaper. They have the exact same body type. You can see the drone in the video. And we found pictures that have the aerial surveillance cameras, the optional loadout underneath the wings with the cameras. And you're not necessarily seeing the wings because those cameras have like a straight line across the top of them. So you're potentially seeing the housing of the camera itself in that video. The satellite video is harder to figure out. We first were able to find out that USA 229, a low Earth orbit satellite pair, was in the Malacca Straits at the exact same time. We had to look up every single satellite that was out there using the old trajectories. And then we finally found the one that was in that location, looking down at the coordinates in the Nicobar Islands. Then the question was, well, like a lot of people say, why does it look like the clouds aren't moving very much? Why does it not look like the satellite itself is moving very much in the picture? And this is how we found the SBIRS system, because people started questioning that. So we started digging around, trying to figure out what are the capabilities. Then we find SBIRS, Space-Based Infrared System, which is a ground-based computer system that's pulling data using signals intelligence from all these satellites in outer space all the time. And this is where we have to deduce that they're creating like a Google Earth where you can, punch in the location and potentially the date and time. And then if they had coverage of the area, you can go there and check it out. And why is this important? Because as people have pointed out, low Earth orbit satellites travel like 16,000 miles an hour. They traverse the planet every 90 minutes. And they don't come back to the same spot. They kind of go to a little bit further a spot. And then after like 12 hours, they get back to the spot they were in before. And this shows that there's no way you could be looking down through these satellites at any point in time. They're moving too fast. Everything would seem really blurry. You wouldn't be able to track objects that way. So instead, what they do is they just take the data from those satellites and then they build it using the computer program, which doesn't seem that unreasonable, but this is literally information that I don't think anybody ever has deduced or figured out. And this is why when I wrote to AARO the other day, I said, like, I'm pretty sure I've basically disclosed more about our surveillance capabilities than anyone ever in history, all just from open source information. And I would say like 99% sure that's exactly how they're playing out with our secret spy satellites. And they're seen at night as well. And we found they actually have the capability to have colorized night vision, not like the green night vision, but like it looks like daytime. And we actually had a video where we proved that as well. So the capabilities of these satellites are absolutely incredible.
Oh, man. Wow, I just learned some new stuff there. That is incredible. All right, this next question is Raidenchenko says, question for Ashton. Was there any other satellite footage request of the plane before the time of the teleportation clip, like footage of when the plane first deviated from its initial route? Great question.
None. And what we do have is we have the Minister of Defense saying that they were that he was told there are U.S. spy satellites in the regions. Are we in touch with them? And he says, yes, we're in touch with them. Yes. On I think it was day 5 press conference, which proves that they knew there were satellites in there, so they had to be, but nobody ever talked about that except for on one CNN. I don't know what the name of the anchor was, but she was speaking to Dianne Feinstein. Okay. And she shows her the bin Laden raid satellite imagery. And you can see people walking around on the street. And she's going, how do we not have imagery of MH370 when I'm looking at people walking around the bin Laden compound? Like, clearly we must have something out there. So this is the part that's really sketchy, because this is a part where whatever you believe about the videos, the United States government knows what happened to this plane. We looked at all the satellites out there. We've had them in geosynchronous orbit scanning the whole planet all the time. We've got these low Earth orbit ones floating around. Like, we have pretty much global persistent coverage. So there must be more information out there. They just haven't made it public.
Great.
Okay. Oh, one other quick comment on that. The next one is that when we were looking up satellites, someone found Marco Lambrook, who he found the Trump satellite picture that Trump posted on Twitter in like 2019, I want to say. He did the reverse, like, kind of checking of the satellites and found out that was USA 224. He also did analysis to figure out if anyone would have seen, if any of the satellites were in the regions to see the Malaysian Airlines flight. But what he did, he based it on the wrong assumption. He assumed the plane crashed in the South Indian Ocean at like, what was it, 8 a.m. or whatever the time says. They say that it crashed based on the satellite pings. So he looked at the wrong location at the wrong time. If he looked at the Nicobar Islands like 6 hours earlier where we looked, he would have seen USA 229 staring right down at the spot where it supposedly turned into the South Indian Ocean. So that's pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, it is interesting. Ivana Rios, have you contemplated the possibility the only fake thing of that video is the explosion. Well, that's an interesting, right? So they're saying the video is real. Someone just added that thing afterwards.
And that's a great point. This is what Ken Stabbing on Twitter, his argument is, oh, they must have added that afterwards. And first off, early on, I thought that must be the case. Like when I first saw the videos, I'm like, that's still MH370. They just, I don't know, manipulated it somehow because it just looks too real in terms of what tracking a plane with a drone would look like. But the more I dug into the science, the thing that really bugged me is that it was an endothermic event. I think if that was an explosion, that someone's making it look like it blew to pieces, then it would have been more believable. The endothermic event part of it always bugged me because I'm like, no, who's even thinking to make this weird cold absorption of energy in there? And I was kept in the back of my mind, but as I dug through the science and started to realize that the science was real as well, that's where I decided that this whole thing is actually just real. And I would have thought we could, warp a plane or, use antimatter to annihilate a plane or whatever is going on in there. But weirdly, the science not only exists, but it's been out there since maybe the 80s, like since Thomas Bearden's been talking about it. And we've just all ignored it because, like people that aren't scientists, like, both of us probably, like we just kind of depend on like academia and the TV to tell us like what the new
100%.
things are, and if it's not something that's coming from our trusted sources, we just ignore it.
Absolutely, man. That's 100%. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. This is Mark Leonard. Says, as an Aussie, I'd love your thoughts on Pine Gap, please, Ashton. P.S. Love your work, mate.
Looked into Pine Gap as well. There's a documentary that was posted like a week or two ago by some guys that like broke into Pine Gap, and then they started like getting like.
Let's say what Pine Gap is real quick, and then
Pine Gap's an American military base in Australia in the outback, extremely advanced. Should have been able to track Malaysian Airlines potentially from takeoff to landing. In fact, later today or tomorrow, I'm going to post a video where they have radar capabilities that can basically bounce off the stratosphere or ionosphere and then therefore look much, much further than what we think they could from a direct line of sight due to the curvature of the Earth. So these types of radars can potentially look thousands of miles. I think Diego Garcia has that capability and Pine Gap has that capability, which again proves the United States government knows what happened to this plane. They potentially could have been tracking it from takeoff. So it's not like, it was out of radar range. Like, no.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that basically.
Really, I didn't mean.
No, that was pretty much what I was going to say. Is like I don't know much about it other than it's a super advanced American military base, and that we've basically been bullying Australia, and we potentially even like got rid of one of their prime ministers who was going to try to shut that base down. So like the United States control over Australia, I think, is a lot more than what people think out there. Which is it's kind of scary. And I don't like exposing my own government, but more and more looking at this, I feel like we're the baddies of the world. We're not the good guys, but
America was built on exposing itself.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, oddly enough, it's almost like we're not Americans if we don't do that. If we're not like Boston Tea Party and fight back, otherwise, like, what is America then? But what I was going to say real quick, one of our mods, Daniel Clancy, he lives in Sydney, and he told me like he was there for a lot of this stuff that was happening with the plane. I don't know. I'm probably reiterating your story wrong, Daniel. So I apologize if you're in the chat right now. Like, that's not what I said, Patrick. I'm not sure, but I know he's connected in some way, did his own research and investigation. So he's been very curious about everything you've done for sure. So
and the Jindal, he also made a comment. I know we're kind of skipping ahead, but this one's not in caps, so I'm gonna mention the Jindali over the horizon radar network. So that's actually that over the horizon network, because I think is the exact type of capabilities I'm talking about. Because the horizon is how far you can see due to the curvature, but they have capability where they can bounce it off and they can see much, much, much further. And so yes, Jindali Jorn system is one of the first radar systems I found that if this plane crashed in the South Indian Ocean, there's no doubt that radar system would have caught it. So how come they searched everywhere and they didn't find it? Supposedly they would have had access to that radar information, right? And this is where people just need to really just think basic. We don't need to even have the videos for this kind of stuff. Like, we had to have seen it if it went there. So how did we not find it? How did they find nothing there? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. The question is, why do this warping of objects on innocent people? I'm assuming they mean innocent.
Yeah, and that's the part that I struggle with a lot. So early on, and the reason why I love having done so many podcasts is because you can see my own thought process change if you were to watch those podcasts. And this is part of the reason why I wanted to do so
Makes sense.
People would see that like I'm not inventing a story, and that the overall story and the evidence has all stayed the same. But
Yeah.
then my interpretation of what it meant and why has adjusted slightly from the beginning. Right in the beginning, I thought, this has got to be aliens and some kind of 1,000-year advanced technology, because it's just like you guys, like, how can you possibly zap a plane like that? How can that be real?
Yeah.
And then the more I
Totally.
dug into it, I realized, no, we not only is this us, but we might have this technology. And then I figured, like, okay, well, why are we doing this? And I thought maybe we are trying to save the plane from the fire, where I figured out this fire event with the help of the MH370X team. And I thought, okay, well, then we're saving the plane. We're being noble. And everybody would come at me like, no, United States government would never save these people. There's no way. And I'm kind of like, yeah, that's a good argument. I can't really counter that. Why would you deploy your trump card just to save some people? And you could argue that there's like a VIP on board this plane who's like, hey, rescue me. I'm putting my thing in, and they deploy the orbs. But even then,
Sure.
it seems like a stretch. But if you look at it from the element of espionage, and there's actually a lot of evidence for the espionage angle, that we set those batteries to explode at that weak point between radars to have the longest delay reaction possible. That the point of this is that the Freescale Semiconductor employees, 20 of them, 8 of them are Chinese. They're going to China. They work for an American company. If you guys look into semiconductors and these microchips, I believe these microchips can enable, if not the exact technology we're seeing in the videos, but the quantum computers that are potentially used to operate it. I think that quantum computers and advanced computers are what allowed this technology to just take off. Where we might have known about the technology going as far back as the 60s and maybe even earlier, but we couldn't really utilize it that well. But then once you have quantum computers that can kind of, they call it nonlinear processing, where they can look at quantum states and determine information. I think the United States government's figured out how to utilize quantum computers in a way the public has no idea about. And then this allowed this technology to take off. And then what you're doing here is you're trying to prevent this technology from getting to China. Also, a lot of the chips are produced in Taiwan, which is an ally of the United States. And there's been this war, subtle war, espionage war between Taiwan and China, even though it's technically part of China. And I think this is, to me, is what's going on. This is espionage. These people were defecting potentially to China, and that we were preventing that from happening in the most spectacular way possible, showing China, like, don't ever try this again, because look what we just did to you. And you can imagine if you get a message like that, where somebody's warping a plane out in front of you using technology that the world thinks is magic. Let's just say you're the president, you're the prime minister or president or whatever of these adversarial countries. Like, that's a pretty strong message. We can take your plane down. No one will ever know. And if you try to tell anybody, they're not going to believe you anyway. That's scary as hell. So that's my opinion.
100%. That's scary. Yeah, you're not wrong, man. This is from Ron, the cute little, what is that? What was that famous Casper? Don't
Casper the Friendly
wait,
Ghost.
What's that say?
Don't atmospheric conditions.
Okay, yeah. Need to be
so
corrected.
That I don't know. I have to dig into more of that. But based on the video that I've got on my computer here, which just shows it just bouncing up and down, I don't think the atmospheric conditions matter at all. Maybe you can't do it during an eclipse. I don't know. But the way the capability is laid out by the people who are producing it is that, like, this can catch a missile from thousands of miles away to allow you to shoot your intercept thing at it or your orbs at it or whatever. So no, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure it works in pretty much all conditions.
I remember when I was studying to be a radio DJ, and I went to like school for that, like broadcasting, and they taught us about FM and AM, right? And AM amplitude modulation, and how basically why on a clear night you can hear, right, an AM signal way further, and FM comes from a tower down where AM bounces off the atmosphere. So maybe that works the same way, right? If it is clearer, it's going to go further or stronger. I don't know. I guess I don't know if radar signals work the same way. I don't really know what are radar signals working off of exactly. Like what?
Yeah, and this is the crazy part, is that the way to make directed energy weapons and to also use scalar physics is from radar. It all comes from radar.
Really?
And one of the weirdest things that I learned was this idea of phase conjugation. And once you start to think about it, it starts to get creepy, because you bounce a wave off of an object. Now, if that wave bounces in a different direction, it doesn't go back to the source. How can you measure it? Kind of like echolocation. You need it to bounce back to you. So what phase conjugation does is it says, no matter the angle that I send the wave at you, it bounces directly back at the source. And now this is what enables scalar physics, because it's the same idea as if you have a wave and I'm shooting it and I have an exact opposite wave and I get them to get perfectly in sync so that they cancel each other out.
Sure.
It's this idea of, is there still nothing left? And if there's nothing left, now you have this scalar potential and a potential scalar wave where even at a distance, you can interfere these two waves, two of the same waves like this, to then cause these effects that we're seeing. This is the basis of directed energy weapons. And this is probably technology that I'm talking about from the 80s. So have they figured out ways to make it even more advanced? Little known fact is the stealth bombers and stuff. The reason why they have weird boxy edges on them is in order so that when radar waves hit them, they bounce off at weird angles.
Correct.
So that they don't bounce back.
Yeah.
This is something where I would never expected radar is like the secret weapon, because it just seems like it's a detection device. But when you really start to dig into the physics of it, you start to realize, like, no, this can actually be turned into a weapon. And this is what's led me to Eric Hecker when he was talking about Antarctica on Sean Ryan, is that our radars could actually be directed energy weapons if you create phase conjugation and then now have these things create these huge potentials at a distance. And now with stuff like we just mentioned too, in terms of bouncing it off the ionosphere or whatever it is to make it go even further. Like these might be long-range super weapons. It's pretty scary stuff.
You know, that's an interesting thought. What about, like, is this true? You tell me if this is true. We're gonna deviate here for just 2 minutes. So when information is sent over a cable line or whatever it is, right? Isn't it a copy at the very end? Like it just copy and gets sent along. So what you get at the end is just like a bunch of, it's not the original, right? When I send an email, right, that data is getting copied and sent along. So what you get is a copy at the end. Is that how radar works?
That's a good question. Honestly, I'm not sure about either of those questions, to be honest with you. It's kind of sad how, like, we have all this advanced capability and, like, no one really knows. The public has no idea how it actually works.
100%.
But that's the scary part too, is about the idea of like quantum teleportation, is that when you look into the science of it, they can do some weird stuff. Like they can say, like, you have like 5 qubits that are entangled together on one side. And then what you want to do is you want to get it to go to another location that's super far away instantaneously. And they can measure just one of them. And then when it shows up on the other side, weirdly, it's not scattered. It's not like it's rearranged or they're in a different sequence. They come on the other side in the exact same pattern, which now you can imagine this idea of sending a picture information, scaling that up. And that's why I think that faster than light communication will be proven to be real as well, is that
I agree.
There's some weirdness going on with the universe, that there's like this self-organizing kind of tendency to it in general that really makes me question what the whole point of the universe is, or what the purpose of it is, what the nature of it is, because I would expect things not to work the way they do. I would expect things to randomize themselves and scatter themselves, but instead it doesn't seem to be the way. It doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. It's so fascinating to talk about, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I want to dig more into that though, because I guess, should probably try to learn how that all works. Now that I figure out that, and this is only the radar thing, is something I've only figured out the last few weeks. And so this kind of goes to show where it was like, this was about first figuring out what happened to the plane and understanding the videos. And now is more into the science and understanding how all the science behind this works and waking people up to that as well, which I hope to talk to Eric Hecker firsthand, because I think a lot of people think that he's, making stuff up or what have you, but that's not the vibe I get from him at all. And I think
he's got an interesting story. He was like a getaway driver for the mob too. I was
like, about that. That'll be funny.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This interview he did with Patrick Bet-David on Valuetainment. It's this random interview. It's like 15 minutes. It's like this random thing. And in there, that's what they talk about. He's a plumber who gets, like, all of a sudden he's a getaway driver for the mob. I was like, wait, what? Now you're going to Antarctica? This is crazy. These stories just get crazier. But like you said, man, like you've always said, to be honest with you, man, you're a great reminder that no matter how loony the story gets, just pause for a moment and keep your mind open, because some of this stuff is that out there. And there are proven examples of that currently working right now. Just our microphone, our video, our streaming internet.
Yes.
I mean, it is crazy to think about. So anyway,
no, that's a great point, real quick too, because
yeah,
I mean, that's what I thought too, is that, and I had similar opinions. I even said this on my stream last night talking about Eric Hecker, is that even like 6 months ago when this first started, I thought like, no, we can't. how could it be how could these DOMs be a transmitter and also receiver and what have you? And now this is where I've learned to keep my mind open to everything, as I really don't
Yeah.
judge people, because I don't, there is stuff out there that's real that we just write off that we really shouldn't. Anyway,
Totally.
let's keep going.
Yeah. No, you're right. This is from John Johnson. Says, did you see the Chinese image of the orbs they posted a day after the plane went missing? If so, why do you think they were sending a message? I don't know anything about this, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Did we show these on the interview? I don't think so.
I don't know. If you got them, I'll do our screen thing and we'll pop it up here.
So first thing to note is that what they China on the day after, actually, what they did was they hacked the Malaysian government the next day. And when they hacked the Malaysian government the next day, they stole crisis meeting minute notes of the plane. And they also stole classified information about the plane, which is very bizarre. Like, why are they stealing all this information from the plane? Because, in my opinion, they had to know something was wrong. That's their
okay.
That,
yeah, we talked about that part, but we didn't see
these satellite images. So 5 days later, they post these satellite images, and I'll pick up. Here's actually all three of them side by side. I wonder if
wait. So China posts these satellite images of flight MH370.
No, so they say that, and this is the weird part. It gets reported. What's this thing here? It gets reported in Western media as being debris from the plane.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to make sure I can see this. Okay, maybe I do it over here.
How would they know that?
They don't. And that's the thing, is that I looked up like the official kind of what was the story in terms of around this stuff, and it looks like it was just reported on, but I don't see any like official statements by anyone from China when you look at this. So here's all three images. I'm going to try to make it big so you guys can see it here. If I click on it, okay, there we go. Now we're talking. So these are the three images. 5 days later, they post these images. It gets reported on as debris in the South China Sea, but they go look in the South China Sea and they find nothing there. But also, we knew at that time the plane never even crashed in the South China Sea, that we knew it already turned back and gone to the west in the Straits of Malacca and the Andaman Sea. So why was this getting reported on as debris? But when you look at it, you can first tell these clouds are cumulus clouds, just like in the videos. These are low altitude clouds that we're looking at here.
Yeah.
And then when you look at this image, this looks like three orbs around an object, or three, in a triangle formation here. Very unusual looking. And this is where the letter to me comes into play.
It does kind of look like that. God damn it. It does. It just makes it even more
weird.
Questionable, right?
And so early on, I didn't report on this right away because I didn't want to be digging too much into the woo on this stuff. And then it just got to the point where it was too awkward, where I'm like, what are these? What am I looking at?
No, that's crazy.
So then I report on it, and the way I report... Go ahead.
No, go ahead, please. So
I was going to say, the way I report on it was that this is like a message from China. If this is related to the videos, this is China saying, we know what you did. Like, this is the best resolution they have. This is nothing, like, compared to the satellite MH370 video, this is nothing. This is just a blurry picture, right? Those videos are super clear. So it could be possible this is China's best capability for whatever satellites they had. Maybe they had a geostationary satellite, and this is the best resolution they could get versus our low Earth orbit satellite that we had in the exact right location. And this is where I argued that, we did this because we were trying to hide the plane, and China, like, this is not enough proof for anyone to prove what happened. If you have the MH370 videos, you've got pretty hard proof, but this, by comparison, is just some blurry pictures. So I argue that this was spycraft. This was China, that the only people who would understand this message if you leak this to the internet is the United States government, whoever took the plane. That they're going to go, oh, they saw us, but this is the best pictures they got. They got nothing. It's not good enough. Yeah. And this bottom right one might actually be like the moment the plane's getting phased out, the zap. I don't know. I'm speculating here because we can't tell what angle these were coming at or what have you. But we did look at this Chinese satellites, and there were satellites that would have been able to see the Nicobar Islands around this time and location. So this is some of the weirdest stuff ever. And this is why some people hate on me for saying, oh, you think it's the United States government, but China wouldn't be leaking this picture if they were involved. They wouldn't be hacking the Malaysian government if they were involved. Most of the people on the plane were their nationals. So to me, that's why I rule China out. Russia, I actually think Russia might start having this kind of capability, but I think they fell really far behind during the fall of the Soviet Union. So that's the reason why I think that I don't think Russia could pull this off. But that's just my opinion. So there's a picture for you guys. Pretty crazy. You guys can Google these yourself.
Yeah.
I can't believe these pictures exist, honestly. And this is the part two where it's like, it's not just about the videos. It's about the huge body of evidence and weird stuff that all seems to line up to this event of US versus China espionage being played
Sure.
at the highest levels that we would just never think is really happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, good point, man. All right, this is from Alien World Airsoft. What is the significance of a triangle formation that we see in so many UFO UAP videos?
Yeah, and I mean, you can probably answer this as best as I can. I'm not 100% sure, but from the videos here, thing that I've gleaned is that a triangle formation, equilateral triangle, has two reasons. Is one is that that's the minimum number of objects you need to create a two-dimensional shape in a three-dimensional environment.
Yeah,
And this kind of gets to the weird physics of higher dimensions, but that if you are trying to induce some kind of doorway, that's what you would need in order to get your object to pass through it. The other part
sure.
about this important is goes back to the phase conjugation. To get phase conjugation to work, you need your wave to exactly cancel itself out, like 100%. Can't be even slightly deviated. So what this requires is a 0-point system. So a 0-point system is essentially an equilateral triangle. So when you have your equilateral triangle, you imagine all three orbs, and they take their, let's call it gravity engines, and they target them right towards the center of mass on one another. What is that going to do? That's going to cancel out all three waves equally. It's going to create phase conjugation for all three waves. And they have to be in that exact orientation. If the triangle is any a little bit off, then the total outcome of all three vectors is not going to be zero. It's not going to be a 0 point anymore at that situation. So I think everything we're seeing in there is for a very specific reason. And that's also the reason why the orbs are collapsing on each other in that video, because it's something called the Coulomb's law, where Coulomb's law says you take your forces of, let's say they're opposite charge forces, and the total electric force increases exponentially as they get closer to one another. And you can imagine
Yeah,
like magnets trying to jam the magnets together. This is the same thing where the force gets stronger and stronger the closer you get to them
yeah,
exponentially. Now you take a
yeah.
really, really strong force, and now you can potentially get an end force as they get a certain distance from one another that's so strong that it actually breaks down what they call the Schwinger limit, which is the limit which the actual, like, I think of it as reality breaking down, where you can actually break through to the vacuum, to the some people call it the ether or whatever of the underlying framework. And that takes huge energy levels, like 10 to the 33. So imagine a number with 33 zeros at the end of it. But when you have a situation where you have the 0-point system where they're collapsing and energy is going up exponentially, it's just a matter of starting with a high enough energy densities in your orbs and then collapsing them together. But I don't know. What is your opinion on the triangle stuff? Because we see that a lot, like the TR3B, and you see just triangle
Oh,
shapes all
bro,
over the place.
I got zero idea, dog. You have a way. I can't beat your explanation, bro. What am I gonna say? Dude, I have no idea. All I know is I hear it a lot. That is for sure. I do hear it a lot from a lot of different people, a lot of different places. All right. This is from Remedy 59.
Yeah.
One of our mods here. She says, wasn't the transponder shut off? I'm assuming
So
on the MH370 flight, right?
yeah, on the actual flight. So this goes back to the investigation of the plane, and people just assume that the pilot turned off the transponder. We don't know that for a fact. And this is one of the big things where there's really
Got it.
no solid evidence that this was any type of suicidal situation. People just speculating that that's the case. But if the batteries were near the electronics bay, which there was two pallets of them in the forward cargo bay right next to the electronics bay. If they damaged the electronics bay, could have caused the same type of situation. You could also argue that if this is espionage, that the AWACS, so these military planes with the radar things on the top of them, they can
Yeah.
supposedly hack airplanes, jam airplanes, that they could have been jamming the signals as well. So in my mind, there's three options. Either the person turned it off manually, and you could also have a situation where somebody took control of the plane and turned it off. The electronics bay was damaged, which is consistent with the fire event and what Mike McKay sees the same time the plane goes dark. Plane lights on fire, gets damaged, goes off. Or it could be those AWACS. And this is where the French father, who lost his wife and his kids, was told by Mr. B, which was supposedly some American intelligence operative, that the
Mr.
Americans know.
Beast.
Yeah, Mr. Beast. No, Mr. B. But yeah, he was told that the Americans know what happened to the plane, that there was two AWACS in the area. So this is, again, more evidence
Wow.
where, and just for people out there to know here, if you were to talk to the families of the victims, they're not going to tell you there was a suicidal pilot. That's like the last theory they're going to tell you. Yeah, I've watched so many interviews these people have had, even recently. That French father did one on French TV. They don't believe that narrative at all. They think this is a cover up, and a lot of them think the plane was literally just abducted. So that's the crazy part too, is that there's such a huge divide between what the public thinks is the most strong narrative versus what the families of the victims think. And it's not just grief; it's that they are kind of like in my shoes, where they've dug through so much of the evidence themselves that they know it doesn't add up. From the public perspective, you only get fed little bits and pieces of what you're told to think, and then you develop your own story in your head. So big divide there.
Yeah. All right. This is from Rod Pyle. How come the government let all those important people on the same flight?
Yeah, great question. That's the weirdest part. So Arwin from the MH370X team did the best research on where these people were seated. 20 people from the same company, like, should have been triggering flags. That's very bizarre. That's way too many
That's the
people.
important people this person's talking
Yeah.
about. That's what you mean, right?
And
These
so, yeah, the
20
20 people from Freescale Semiconductors, like my company, like once you go over 2 or 3, like it's going to trigger an alert. And then you also book through the same travel agency so they know
Yeah.
if you're on the same
20 is
flight.
a lot.
It's a lot.
20 is a lot.
They were
Yeah,
all
that's a
sitting
lot.
next to each other as well. Some of them
Yeah.
had their whole families with them to go on a week-long. There's 2 different stories out there. One is they were going to upgrade the plants in China, and the other one is that they were going on a training exercise. Either way, it makes no sense to bring your family with you on a all the way across the world trip and have your whole family sitting next to you and come with you.
I
A
could
business
see
trip.
that. I'm not saying it that, but I could
Not
see why you
impossible,
would
but
take your family because, oh, I'm going across the world. You guys should come. It's a free vacation. The company's paying for it. Are they American?
no, none of them are. They work for the American company. 8 of them are
Got it.
Chinese nationals and 12 are Malaysian nationals. And this is
Oh,
where, if you believe the
okay.
espionage scenario and the weird, creepy letter that I got, that letter says that the United States government knew this was going to happen back in December, 3 months before it goes down, and that they basically let this play out just to destroy the plans mid-flight, and have this be
Interesting.
some grand spectacle that they put on for China, which seems incredible. But when you look at all the evidence stacked up and the satellite picture and all this other stuff, you're like, is it possible? It's weird for sure. So yeah, I think they're definitely the target to me, and a lot of people speculated that. Even Joseph P. Farrell on March 20th did an interview, and he was on point. He was like, this was a message by someone, and he was thinking it could be a non-human intelligence thing as well, but he also was thinking it could be United States or what have you. He just didn't see the connection between the employees and the technology. They had just come out with this microchip that was smaller than a dimple in a golf ball, like this tiny little thing. Like it was, and some of these things are just like several microns across. They're very, very tiny. This is the stuff that's enabling, if this technology is real out there, this magic technology, this is what's allowing it to get to that point.
Wow. This is from Al. Shouldn't the black box be located? Yeah. Yeah. The black box. Don't they have I don't know. Doesn't that go off or something? Some sort of.
Yeah,
I guess
they didn't even find a black box. So these black boxes, they're rated for over 20,000 feet deep. This is deep enough to, even if they got in a Mariana Trench, theoretically, they could have found these black boxes. They claim, based on these satellite pings, that they know where the plane crashed based along this arc. They search all up and down the arc. They find not one piece of debris, no black boxes. There was even a weird report where they claim, if you guys look in the some of the news stories, that they heard some sound. They knew that wasn't a black box ping because the black boxes ping at a very specific frequency. That's not something that can be mimicked in nature at all. It's not like it's whales or something like that. So you could tell that they were just desperate to find anything. And even though they knew there was no chance that could be the black boxes, they reported on in the news and they went and searched there. It turned out that it was just like one of the devices they used. They dragged these devices like on a string underneath the water behind the boats. And apparently one of them was damaged. And that's how they got these false pings or whatever. But yeah, they should have found the black boxes. They should have found debris. And this is where, if you listen to Peter Waring, who was one of the searchers with Australia in the Navy, you can listen to his interviews he did during 10-year anniversary, and gave away a lot of information because he's like, they were wondering what was going on. Because if you're the person searching, you're wondering, how are we not finding anything? How are we not finding the debris field? We're not finding debris. We're not finding any black boxes. They're not talking about the radars that should have seen the plane. And so the logically minded people that have done searches are sitting there. They must, in the back of their minds, going, something's not right here. And he says they must have got something wrong. What he's not saying, the subtext is those satellite pings must be wrong. There's something wrong with those satellite pings. And the reason why you don't say that is because now you're broaching on conspiracy territory, where the only people that can manipulate those satellite pings from Inmarsat are the US or UK intelligence agencies.
Dang. Okay, Alan Beck Sorensen. Could the pilot have been hired by the people behind this? Seems like he might have trained the flight on his flightism, and the whole thing could have been planned out with the transponder, etc. Well, okay.
Yeah, so early on, I thought that might be the case. Thought maybe they just paid this dude. They were like, "Yo, man, like, you know, we got this operation, you know, and you're going to be in on it." But the reason why I sort of ruled that out was that flight simulator thing. He had this custom simulator. It was like all these screens, and apparently that's pretty common for pilots. He just loved flying, loved it.
Yeah.
And they actually ruled out that flight simulator data. Not a lot of people realize this, but the Malaysian Minister of Defense, that got analyzed by the FBI, it was ruled out as not being suspicious. So for the people that believe the suicide thing, like it takes almost a bigger conspiracy than warping the plane with orbs, weirdly enough, because all the stuff's been ruled out related to this suicidal pilot thing and the pilot being involved in it. Doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means the officials have ruled it out. That simulator data was actually MH370 to Jeddah. I actually just sent it was actually New York Mag. So when you guys see me on Vetted and you hear me say New York Post, I said the wrong thing. It's New York Magazine that Jeff Wise wrote an article on, where he was one of the first people to try to float this pilot practice the routes argument. It was complete nonsense. He was actually scheduled to fly MH370 on February 4th. The route was in his computer from February 2nd, February 3rd. So he was literally just practicing the route. He was already planning on flying. And then what they do is they take one single waypoint and they try to connect it to say it's connected to that. Then they draw a line. They go, oh, he was practicing it to fly to the South Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
But when you look at them overlaid, it's not the same route at all. And this is
why would you plan out your suicide mission, right? Like, oh, let me virtually fly this suicide mission. Does that make sense? Like, that's weird too.
Yeah.
You're just gonna do it. Yeah, you just crash the plane. You're not practicing this. That's nothing to practice.
That's like espionage. That's like hijacking, right? That's not like a suicide thing. And this is the other thing that people don't realize is you're also not flying this weird route where you like go around Indonesia. You would just go right over Indonesia if you're going to South Indonesia. What do you care if they bring some jets up? You're suicidal. Totally. You're just gonna crash the plane anyway. So this is part 2 where it's just, you know, even whether or not. And this is what I said on some several podcasts. We don't even need the videos to know there's some sketchiness going on with this whole MH370 plane thing. Like
1000%,
whatever it is like people are knowing they're lying. So anyway, so that question. So I don't think the pilot was involved. The stuff about his wife was also that was fake news. His wife supported him. His coworker said he was a super nice guy. The officials, there's even an official report where they said that it could not have been something that was pulled off by the pilot. But I would say the Iranian passengers, the 2 fake passengers who were from Iran, their story makes no sense. You don't go to Beijing to flee to Amsterdam. That's not even the right direction. So if there's any weird people on board the plane, and they get just like kind of just after like 2 days, they just never talk about those people ever again. And I'm like, dude, there's 2 people on fake passports on this plane that disappeared. How is that not like number 1 and 2 suspects on your list? Like that is crazy to me. Those aren't the number 1 and 2 suspects, no matter what.
I will say, just as devil's advocate, I'm not saying I'm just saying.
No, sure.
You know, maybe potentially any plane manifest. I'm saying, and I know there's a lot of flights, but I bet any manifest you got from any flight, you'd be able to find something weird about people on it or something. It doesn't make sense. Like, oh, this guy with this guy, that, you know, some sort of connections, but
for sure
there is a lot of interesting connections with that flight. Let's be real. It does take a different weight considering the other context of the other stuff. Right. So, yeah.
And that's why I haven't ruled out, or like I haven't directly said those guys did something on the plane.
100%.
It's just more of like, that's super weird and, you know, probably shouldn't be ignored. If anything, I would say they're more likely to have interfered with the plane than the pilot doing something. Because if those were, let's say, intelligence agents from the United States government that, you know, we've got on this plane to, let's say, silence the passengers. I think one question, I don't know if we're going to get to, people asked was, why didn't people send out messages or call anyone? Well, first of all, the Philip Wood, there actually is a message from Philip Wood to somebody from being on board the plane where he says he couldn't breathe and that there was some issue with the ventilation on board the plane. Now, I haven't
Oh,
reported on
really?
it in depth because I just, like you guys, I'm like, is that a real message or is this some kind of fake thing? But realized in 2014 it wasn't as common to have Wi-Fi connectivity. They probably did have
Oh,
it on this
sure.
plane, but people didn't usually use it or buy it. So,
Yeah.
and it wasn't very good either. So, but I would argue that if there was messages or like Mayday calls, they've all been classified and suppressed. In my opinion, there were probably Mayday calls and other communications after the plane went dark, and that those have been suppressed by the same people who fabricated the satellite pings and are covering up what happened to this plane.
Yeah. Steph Dengenar, sorry. How can human bodies survive being teleported? I mean, that's a great, like, what's happening exactly, right? Are there the matter is literally going I mean, how does that happen?
Yeah, so the key here is for the people on board the plane, if they were to survive, and I don't know, what I will say to you guys is from some of the scientists that I've talked to, they're very skeptical if anyone would have survived this. Very skeptical. Let's just say that. And I haven't put a lot of those records stuff in public on the record, but behind the scenes, that's what people tell me. But the way that you would survive is it's like Stargate, like a portal. When you tie the portal from your frame of reference inside the plane, it's like walking through a door. It's not like you don't feel the plane, phasing down and disappearing. You don't feel like that.
That's interesting.
You're just feeling like
you're
walking
saying
through
from
a
their
doorway.
perspective.
From their perspective.
Okay,
And this is how Einsteinian physics works as well. Is all of us are in our own frame of reference. This is why time dilation is real, is that we can actually experience time at different rates, which you would think shouldn't be possible. But this is why it's so important to understand that concept, because when you have your own frame of reference, now from people on board the plane, from our outside perspective looking at it, it looks like that plane just got zapped. And now it's going to show up somewhere else, and there's going to be some other counter zap, and it's going to appear out of there. But from the people on board the plane's perspective, it's just going to look like they're walking through a doorway. Now, all of a sudden, they're just in a different spot, like you see in a lot of movies and the show Stargate, etc. Now, also, this is where it just gets weird, like where we can't really wrap our human brains around it. But this idea of this extra dimension where the wormhole, we don't see the wormhole itself. We just see the mouths of the wormhole, which is our zap on either end. But there's something happening. What's happening there is that it's essentially going through what you would think of as the extra dimension, the fifth dimension, as I call it. You've got your 3 spatial dimensions, you've got your time dimension, and then you've got this extra dimension, which is the underlying framework. And so a lot of people then think, oh, this is where the extra,
but it must be squeezed, right? Because you're saying they're just going through, so it must be.
So what they're doing is they're creating a gravity wave. Exactly. So they're creating a gravity wave that is manipulating that underlying fabric, which can bend space-time itself, and it can bend it where it just instantaneously poofs. And this is the part where you would think, well, would I see the bending of space-time? But no, because there's this extra dimension, it's happening in a dimension that we literally do not perceive. And that's the super bizarre part about it. But that's why I love the videos, is because it helps us to visualize what will we really see if there was a wormhole versus what we get from the media and TV that they try to visualize it. Yeah.
Do you think some of the clouds went with it in the teleportation? Because it's around the clouds. So do you think the part of the clouds went with it, or the air around it? Does that make sense?
I think the air did, for sure. Yeah, the air around it, like anything that's in the bubble, the azimuth around the 3 orbs that they create is coming with it, in my opinion. And that's why I asked people too, like, are there limitations to this technology? I'm guessing doing it in the air is beneficial, or because if you're on the ground, you have to warp the ground with you as well. I don't know if you can do this to solid matter. Even if you do it to water, it might be weird, because then the water might be coming with you. So it might be a situation where, even though this seems like magic, it doesn't mean it's infallible. It doesn't mean it can do anything. There's still potentially limitations to it, that's a good thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. Okay. Oh gosh. Now I'm getting
a lot of questions.
I got all into what you were saying, and
that's good.
I stopped paying
this
attention
conversation
to the question.
People are loving this. There's a lot of questions, guys. You guys are awesome in the chat. Keep them coming.
Yes, and shout out to the mods. Thank you guys so much for hanging in and taking care of everything. I know it's late for some of y'all in the UK, Australia. We got people from all over the world watching, man.
Thank you, mods.
This is Boxing Homer. What evidence would you still need to 100% prove the videos are real?
Yeah, I mean, here's the reality. I don't think
Could
there's
it
any
ever
way.
get to
Yeah,
100%?
I don't think
That's
we could ever
impossible.
get to 100%. I think we're in a post-truth
Yeah,
world at this point, and this is just all of UFOlogy. I don't think there's
sure.
anything that people would 100% rally behind. I think that if Joe Biden comes out with the alien bodies, or whoever your favorite scientist is, Eric Weinstein for some people, even then people are going to say that they're lying or what have you. But in my
Yeah,
mind, what the absolute proof would be is if Edward C. Lin, the guy who I've identified as the leaker, if he were to come out and go, "I leaked the MH370 videos," to me, that's 100%. People then, I don't know what people would say. They would come up with some reason for why he must be lying, or they would say, "Oh, he's just trying to get fame off of this." But guys, like I've never directly talked to the guy, so if Edward C. Lin does come out in the future, at this point, like that proves these videos are real, please, because that's like the best we can possibly get. I mean, I identified him independently, looked through all of his records, his case against
yeah,
him. The NCIS wouldn't give us anything about it. They said it's classified for the interest of national defense and foreign policy. Like the
wow,
timelines, like this is the guy. It's got to be the guy. And someone
dude.
else, related question, said, this was early on, said,
Yeah, yeah.
I'd be interested in your thoughts on Lynn's defense claim that the classified materials were already on the internet. Does this mean that Lynn is not the primary leaker? And I've wondered that as well. I don't think that Edward C. Lin is regicided on. I don't think he uploaded those videos directly. In fact, it may have been an accidental situation where if you guys look into the case into him, they were trying to get him for sharing information inappropriately. So you can imagine that he shares these videos with someone and then they post it on the internet. Now he's effed, because now
Yeah,
like they're gonna lead it back to him. They're gonna find out who
sure.
emailed that person, whatever, and that person potentially could have been regicided on. Where if anyone, then he had
So
Taiwanese
maybe something
contacts.
happened to Regicide Anon.
Yeah, I mean, they could have silenced Red Side.
That's
The thing I've learned too
that's
is
why it
it's
hasn't
good
come
to be an
forward.
American, guys. Like it's good to be an American. The CIA is a vicious organization. If you're not American, you don't have American rights, like they can just kill you. And
Yeah.
so I let's just say I pray for Regicide Anon, because it's weird that Regicide Anon went dark and that I'm talking about these videos and that they argued the video's authenticity to other people early on and that they're the first person that uploaded them. Like it's not
Dude,
looking
if
super good.
Regicide Danon didn't come forward after the $150,000 reward, clearly this is someone who posted online, right? Was someone online, part of a community. Definitely 2017 comes around. You don't think they're going to be a part of all this? I remember looking at like their whatever accounts they had, who they followed, other people that they looked at. Like they were very
Mhm.
much into UFOs and what's
Yep.
going on and wanting to share videos like that. So there's just no way they wouldn't be around. What is odd is some of the accounts they followed stopped posting too.
Yeah.
I thought that was
It's
weird. You
yeah,
know
and
what
their
I'm
post on
saying?
Twitter where they're like, "Oh, watch this before it's gone." That's a really weird thing. Like
But even
you're either in on the
the
hoax or yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, exactly. But even the people they follow and were it's like, was it the same person running all these accounts and then they left, or was it different people? I don't know. But it is like you said, dude. No matter what, there's a lot of strange shit around this like case,
For
dude.
sure.
Like 1,000%. It's crazy. All right, let's. Oh my gosh, if you see a question, Ashton, please just go for it. But I'm trying to catch up here. Oh, this might be a
No
good one
problem.
here. Lucas Pastin says, "What about air explosion? 3 months later, another Malaysian plane exploded.
Yeah.
MH17."
Yeah, and a lot of people want me to connect the two. There's this conspiracy theory out there that they repurposed MH370 into MH17 to cover up whatever they did to it. It's just, guys, it's too complicated. Like,
Wait. What?
yeah,
What did you
I
just
don't know
say?
all the details, but they claim that okay, they used MH370, they got it to Amsterdam, which is where that MH17 came from. They loaded it up with dead bodies, and then they flew it to Ukraine and shot it down to cover up and hide all the bodies.
Oh,
The problem is,
okay.
guys, there's a completely different number of people on that plane. They have their own families, so it's like now not only do you have to cover up the 239 people on MH370, but another 300 people that either never existed or whatever. It was a huge
Yeah,
thing, and a lot of them they're not like all the people on MH370 were of Asian descent, most of them, like 90% of them, and the people that were on MH17 were mostly Dutch people as well, so like white people. So and this comes from the fact that people argue that Russia said there's some claim that Russia said the bodies were more decomposed or something on the ground. Guys, this is what I really want to tell you is that I was actually online. I used to be really into the internet and following stuff. I was online when the Russian separatist general bragged about shooting down that plane. They bragged about it. And 15 minutes later, when they realized that it was a passenger plane they shot down, they thought it was a Ukrainian plane. They deleted the post. You guys can probably Google and find that. So to me, that rules out that it was somehow the other plane. Because why is this guy making a social media post bragging about shooting on the plane and then deleting it later on? Because they knew they screwed up. They accidentally shot down a passenger plane. And then there was this big drama about they shouldn't have been in a war zone or whatever. And that after that, they rerouted the planes around the conflict zone that was going on there.
I mean, that's kind of a good point, but also, God damn it, I would never be flying Malaysia Airlines after that. Like, I mean, you know, like within 3 months, 2 plane, like get
no,
me
it's
that
a
one
huge thing. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like do people still fly that airline? I don't know why.
Somebody posted a picture in my Discord today of their friend flying on Malaysian Airlines.
You know what,
actually.
Ashton, in some weird way, you need to take a Malaysia Airlines flight and document
I've flown it before, but I'm not.
Oh, you have?
I'm good on that. I'm good. No, because I used to live in Singapore, so Malaysian Airlines was like the cheap, like one that you could fly,
like Ryanair sort of thing for
yeah,
Europe.
but it wasn't. Yeah,
or
exactly. It was
Spirit
similar.
here.
Yeah. So I absolutely flew on Malaysian Airlines. So that's part of the reason why I wanted to look into it too. Because I'm like, just for the record, guys, if I die from a plane crash ever in the future, then you guys will know I'll predict my own death because I'm super afraid of flying on airplanes because I'm afraid that's how I'm going to end up going out. You guys may say, "Oh, what's the safest way to travel?" Fine, I don't know. I'm still afraid of it. I'm afraid of flying. And this was before all this. Now I'm like really afraid.
Oh my gosh, I don't blame you. Yeah, man. The older I get, the more I don't like flying at all.
Yeah, I'd rather drive.
Yeah, 100%. Oh gosh. Okay, let me see here. Mallory M. Ashton, can we discuss the passenger manifest in greater detail? What is the motivation to have blinked this plane out of the sky and put it somewhere else?
Yeah, so this again is going to come down to this idea. You need to have a big reason. I don't think the cargo is enough. A lot of people think that there was some secret cargo, advanced radio technology, microchips, gold. Some people even say none of those things are big enough for me. There's much easier ways to take care of it. To me, it's got to be about the intellectual property related to the people on board. The Freescale Semiconductor employees stick out like a sore thumb. Like we've mentioned, 20 is too many people. They actually, Freescale Semiconductors was tied or talked about in a 2005 National Security Agency report that was about the commercial emergence of room temperature superconductive microchips. Those are the microchips they use in quantum computers. Okay. They were also connected to U.S. aerospace and defense through serving RF power needs, which I think is radio frequency power needs. So again, this goes back to the idea of the radar system. So this company was directly connected to the U.S. defense, and you've got these people going to China that could have been defecting that were Chinese nationals. To me, that's the whole point of doing it. And then, like, why have this big show? Why start the plane on fire? Why warp it out? As Joseph P. Farrell mentioned, and it was crazy listening to his interview. Like, I listened to this just several weeks ago, and I'd already had the letter to Ashton, come to my own independent conclusion. And he's sitting there literally saying that this was somebody sending a message to someone. And that's exactly what I'm saying now is that, that's what it looks like, is that United States government's telling China, as the letter to me would say, who's your daddy? Like, this is what we can do. Do not mess with us. And that seems crazy, but like, man, imagine that's what's really happening in the covert world where like these people have technology that we think is magical and they are just playing gamesmanship with one another. And you can't say anything about it because no one's going to believe you. If China comes out and says they warped the plane, the United States is immediately going to counter back with every single cable TV station and say that China's spreading disinformation, that they're the ones responsible. And then we'll believe it because that's how we roll. So when you think about it from that level, it's scary. Especially when Putin even said that like it's not worthwhile getting into a propaganda war with the United States because it's not cost benefit. There's no cost benefit to it. Like that the United States will win the propaganda war. When you hear that stuff, it's scary. Now, to go on one quick tangent on that, because I don't want to forget, is that people should wonder, why is Russia talking about hypersonic weapons? But has the United States ever talked about hypersonic weapons or having them? Never that I can think of. And when you look into hypersonic weapons, like I did a couple of weeks ago, what it takes to make something move that fast, to break friction, is a plasma sheath in front of it.
Okay.
And what do we see in the MH370 videos? We see a ball of plasma, and we see those orbs traveling like Mach 2 or Mach 3 speeds. I think those are our hypersonic weapons that we don't talk about. I think it's crazy to think that we don't have our own hypersonic weapons, especially if Russia's talking about it. I think we're more advanced than they are. I think we're looking at our hypersonic weapons in these videos, and I think our hypersonic weapons they've reached magical points where now we can use scalar interferometry and warp an object from one location to the other. Now, people say, why don't we do that on a small scale? I think it takes large scales, and even to pull it off, the amount of energy required to do this is huge.
Yeah.
At least relative to stuff that you could perform in a small lab. So that's the part where I think, guys, looking at the hypersonic weapons, like we've got our own as well, and those might be it.
That's a good point. I mean, I have a few thoughts real quick.
Yeah.
One, has there ever been another example of this weapon being used? And two, wouldn't that amount of energy that's required to make for that event to happen, wouldn't that like set off alarms or energy? Like, does that make sense? Like there would be evidence of that energy somewhere else, or, you know, like a shock wave, some sort of, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we've got detectors for that kind of thing. Like we call it like a gravitational wave detector. I think when you look at it where we talk about we're like monitoring the ionosphere and magnetosphere, I think it goes well beyond just trying to see what happens. I think we're looking to see if other people are using these types of weapons, or that if Russia is using a scalar weapon, either against individuals like Havana syndrome, or if they might even be doing stuff to induce earthquakes. I know that seems crazy, but with this kind of technology to transmit energy over long distances, you can also transmit it into the earth. And it's not that you are like forcing an earthquake to happen, but if you send the energy into the fault line where there's already potentially an earthquake about to happen, you're like making it, speeding the process along. And so I think that's why we're doing is that we're monitoring the ionosphere and magnetosphere, because we want to see, is anyone else doing this kind of stuff out there? Because if the war is this covert war being played on this high level that we've got going on, then it's a matter of you looking for it and them looking for it, et cetera. And I think that's why we see all the advancement in those areas where from the public perspective, it just seems like, oh, well, they're just doing it for research purposes for NASA or whatever, but it gets potentially a lot more dark. And this kind of goes into the Antarctica stuff as well, where they talk about those DOMs, and it's not just a matter of monitoring, but these are also potentially transmitter devices as well. But yeah, in terms of has it ever been done before? And people say, why haven't they done it since? Well, how do we know? The only reason why we have any idea they did this is because there's just 2 videos out there showing it in super high definition from military ass sites and IR thermal. Like this isn't like using your iPhone to look up there. So I don't know. They could be using it more often. My guess is this is the type of technology you only break this out when you really are either sending a message to somebody, or when we get in the next world war and you want to break out your trump card that just, it's like the equivalent of atomic bomb. Why don't we drop more atomic bombs? Well, because it does a huge amount of damage. And other people will retaliate as well. And we don't need to. Exactly. We don't need to. And this is why people say, oh, when the Ukraine war, the Israel, Hamas stuff, why aren't we breaking out our orb tech? Because we don't need to. We can just use all the crappy old technology that we need to get off the shelves. It's all about money anyway. So those are, to me, some of the easiest questions to answer.
Yeah, no, great answers, man. You've been doing a great job tonight, by the way.
Oh, this has been great.
Answering all these questions. This is Christine Rip. Is there any evidence to suggest a plane has already been found and hidden? Okay, so I guess she's saying where it went.
Yeah, so this would be kind of like consistent with maybe if it was shot down. There's no way they could hide all the debris. Especially if it gets shot down in the sky, the debris field have been massive, like potentially tens, if not hundreds of miles after it drifts all over. And there's boats everywhere. People would have been picking up debris all over the place. They wouldn't have been able to suppress it. In terms of, and then I just kind of a little tangent, like, I don't think they're ever going to find this plane, even now. A lot of people, too, were arguing, oh, well, the search is going to be restarted. I think Ross Coulthard's name of his video was that they confirmed their searches are being restarted. That's not confirmed. In fact, I don't think they're going to search again ever, because they know they're not going to find anything. And that's the sad state of the situation here, because they know they looked everywhere already. And these experts are just trying to tie themselves in knots, convincing, well, they missed the little crack between these 2 areas on the seafloor or whatever. It's like, dude, the debris field would have been massive. Like we don't need to like have a tiny little sliver where we didn't search. We searched like broadly everywhere. So I don't think they're going to try to plant a plane, trying to plant another like Malaysian Airlines flight, a 777 somewhere. Like these planes are huge. Not they can't pull it off, but it'd be very difficult. And there's no evidence necessary to say that they found it. This does go to the point early on. People say, well, wasn't there some debris that was found? We touched on this in our interview.
Yeah.
I think I'm one of the few people that says, in terms of people that think that there's a conspiracy at play, that can be from MH370. I would actually even entertain the idea that the plane crashed somewhere west, like near Diego Garcia. I personally think it landed in Diego Garcia, based on the evidence we talked about earlier. But that debris can be from MH370 in this scenario. The plane is on fire. It's damaged. We have a B7, a fire suppression device that washes up. So there could have been holes in this plane, stuff that was ripped off. So like the engine cowling they found, that could be from MH370. The problem is it literally could not have drifted from the location where they say the plane crashed. It's 3,000 miles from there to South Africa. And you imagine just a little piece of thing like floating in the water. It doesn't have like this direct beeline to Africa. And like 500 days is a year and a half, seems like a long time. But when you do the math, it has to drift like 5 or 10 miles per day in a straight line. There's no way this debris is drifting over there. But Diego Garcia is like halfway to that location, where it's much easier now for it to drift it from there. Or they just ripped the plane up, threw it in the water. But also, if those islanders saw the plane, maybe that plane, Sergio Calduvo says that plane crashed somewhere over there. If it crashed somewhere over further west, then maybe the debris washed up over there. The people that, you know, they have their own theories that they say like the plane went to China or Russia. Those people have to say that all that debris is fake, because there's no way the debris could get from those places all the way over to Africa. And then they would say that, well, the flaperon's the only one that was tied with a serial number, and they didn't use the unique serial number. This unique serial plate is just magically missing. It's like this bolted on thing. It's just missing. The story is that it washed off, and instead they use a part number. Well, there was like another plane that was disassembled just months earlier that no one knows where that plane ended up going. So you could argue that that debris was planted, I suppose. That's not my personal theory, but it does cast doubt on the debris. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Want all the details. This is Kelter 2021. Do you know anything about the two people who loaded the batteries? First, I guess explain the batteries.
So this is actually going to the GRU Russian report that came out, which seemed like disinformation at the time, but maybe wasn't. 2 Navy SEALs were aboard the Alabama Maersk. This was the boat that was the Captain Phelps boat that they made a movie about with Tom Hanks. That was the boat that was supposedly, according to this report, transporting something that was getting put onto MH370. 2 Navy SEALs die under really mysterious circumstances. They go out all night. They come back in the morning. They both overdose at the same time in their cabin from heroin and alcohol. And they both died at the same time. And then there's like drugs all over the ground around them, like somebody just sprinkled some crack on them or whatever. It's super weird, their deaths, and their family members are adamant that foul play was involved, that these guys didn't use drugs. Yeah, you guys can look them up.
Dude,
I did
that is so weird, dude.
Yeah,
I mean,
so now you're seeing how much weird
weird
shit, sorry for swearing, but how much weird crap is going on related to this plane. And supposedly, and this is just like, there's no way to confirm this, supposedly the cargo got from that boat onto this plane. So that could be like, let's say, rigged batteries that were set to explode or something like that, theoretically. To me, the batteries are the most unusual thing. But then there was also,
is that common to have batteries like that on
no,
a flight like
not
that?
anymore. In fact, they're outlawed now. On passenger planes, you cannot have lithium-ion batteries in the cargo at all. And this had at least 500 pounds of them.
So this is before...
It was right around the time where we were learning the dangers of lithium-ion batteries. And actually right after this is when the FAA started taking it really seriously. And if you look at the FAA's website, you can Google lithium-ion battery fires. Like in 2014 is like the first year that they are tracking it. And there's just like 10 incidents. And then now it's like 74 or 72 per year. That's 1 per week. And this is just domestic flights. And this is after they've outlawed them in the cargo bay. These are ones that are like in the passenger area where your phone's going off. And this is like what, 1 pound or less of a lithium-ion battery in this? Totally. We're talking 500 pounds stacked up in pallets.
Well, so then I guess it is possible. Well, that's what I mean. Maybe, maybe there was something not dubious of they went off and started a fire and the plane couldn't handle it and they crashed somewhere and it's just all this big mess and whatever. I don't know. That is interesting though. For
the big thing about that story is like, and I thought about that. It's like, well, if there's this fire, which is what we had kind of deduced, that why are they covering this up? Why not just tell 100%. The world there was a fire going on?
Yeah. There's like, just a lot of shady shit, right? They always say it's never the crime, it's the cover up. Exactly. And, definitely the information that has come out post this plane going missing is odd every which way you look at it, regardless of these videos. It's just
exactly.
odd, every little thing. So I agree, man. All right, let's see here. Let me get oh my God, I'm so far behind. I'm sorry, y'all. Okay, we're talking here. Let me just bring up let's see here. No, that's not.
For the person who just asked the super chat, I don't know if the people are dead or alive. I like to think they might have been because of the Philip Wood picture, but the thing is, I don't try to tell people stuff that I don't know for sure. Like if I'm very confident, I'll give my opinion, but when I don't know, I say I don't know. And the reality is I don't know what they did with the pastors. If you think they're alive, the most logical explanation to me is they're in witness protection. And that's why the families have moved on, is they can never talk to their families ever again, which is pretty damn dark, but I don't know.
What if they went to a different time?
Yeah, and there is this, people don't realize, but there is time dilation is real. So when you travel the speed of light, which is what would be happening here regarding this warping event, then you do go to the future, but it's going to be proportionate to your distance traveled. In order to go to far enough in the future where you would show up 10 years later, you're going to have to make thousands of loops around the Earth, or you're going to have to go to Alpha Centauri and back or something like that, which is light years away. If you're just going from the Nicobar Islands to the Maldives, the time dilation effect would probably only be a few seconds. So I don't think this is like a manifest situation where the plane's going to show up in the future here. The time dilation wouldn't be strong enough for that. But it is theoretically possible, and we're dealing with physics here that really starts to break our minds. And some people have argued you could hold the plane in superposition, which would be this idea that it's just stuck out there and that it can appear at some point in the future.
I was actually going to ask you that too, actually.
It's weird, but it is somewhat consistent with the laws of physics as we understand it. So I don't know on that one.
Yeah, no, that's. I mean,
here, I want to share real quick while you're looking for another question, a couple things that I saw in the chat, images. So first of all, somebody asked where the satellite coordinates. So this one here is the satellite coordinates from, let me see if I can zoom that in. These are the satellite coordinates from the videos calculated out where we got them written out. You can tell you can't so this is 8 different times the screen shifts. Every time the screen shifts, the coordinates change. 2 of them are unreadable. The second one and the 7th one, you can't read. But these other ones, they can be read. If you graph this out, this is how we were able to figure out this is the Nicobar Islands. Because you can tell that either it's going north into the east, which would be a curve. Well, I guess if you guys are looking at me, it'd be like a curve like this, or it's going south into the east. And the problem is we see the plane turning to the left in 2 videos, which tells us that you can't be going north into the east. That would be a right-hand turn. And so that means the plane must be going south into the east, which means that what we're looking at here is the Nicobar Islands. So these are the coordinates if you want to see those. The next thing I want to show real quick is... the people are asking about the GRU report. Okay, so this one here is the GRU report. Russia puzzled over Malaysian Airlines capture by the U.S. Navy. This is weird in retrospect. At the time, people thought this was just disinformation or misinformation. But the Russian GRU is like the equivalent of their FBI. And they essentially said that their surveillance, they said after it received a highly suspicious cargo that had been loaded and tracked to the Indian Ocean, where it had previously been aboard the U.S. flagged container ship MV Maersk, Alabama. That's the Captain Phelps ship. And that they were confused over why the United States Navy captured and diverted a Malaysian Airlines civilian aircraft from its intended flight path to the secretive base known as Diego Garcia. And then later on, it says how they were tracking this potentially happening, that they had told China that was going to happen, that China was potentially planning on diverting the plane when it got into Chinese aerospace. So this is super weird given the evidence and scenario around what we've seen going on. You guys can only really find this, I think, on the Wayback Machine, which I've got up here in the chat. But if you guys search for this name, I think you should be able to find it if you want to look at it and read the details for yourself. We won't get into all of those. Super weird. Also, this image I want to show people, this is very important for the debunkers and people out there who are skeptics. And I should probably show this picture every single time because this is actually the side-by-side. There's another version where you don't have the side-by-side here. This is the actual accurate lighting from the ZAP in the satellite video.
Yeah, let me make it bigger. Yeah.
Where you can see that it's accurately illuminating the clouds in 3 dimensions. This is why this cloud here in the foreground, or in the right next to the ZAP, is dark, because it's accurately illuminating the other side of it, which we don't see. Same thing we see on the left side here. And then down here at the bottom, there's clouds that aren't very illuminated because the lighting is not getting to them as well. So this one is huge, because what this means is that this cannot be a 2D cloud picture that we're looking at, because this requires a full 3D render environment using software like CAD in order to get the lighting, the pinpoint lighting and the directional lighting correct on this. You can't do this in After Effects. So everybody who's tried to recreate these videos has used After Effects. They've claimed to use After Effects. So this rules that out conclusively. So this is one of the strongest pieces of evidence that these videos are real. And this evidence goes all the way back to August of last year. And this is when I saw this, in addition to the thing that we talked about, the Citrix session in our interview. This is when I went like, holy crap, the whole thing is real. To the point earlier where I said, what about the zap being added? If the zap was added, then they created a full 3D rendered environment for it. And doing that takes a lot more effort, takes a lot more rendering and a lot more detail, because these clouds are super accurate, volumetric clouds. So trying to get perfect real clouds in a 3D rendered environment, it would not look nearly as good as it does. So this is some of the strongest evidence here. And then, you know what, I'll play as well real quick the clip that I want to show that shows the clouds matching in both videos, because this is the other thing that proves that it must require a 3D rendered environment. Where's the cloud? Oh, here's Cloud Sync. Okay, let me pull this up. Okay, share this.
And guys, let's see from some of the mods. Let's please be respectful in the chat. I don't know what's going on, but please listen to the mods. Whatever they say, I agree with, and I got their back. So you know, whatever it is, I agree with them.
Yeah, and yeah, I understand. Like, this is, you know, what UFO Shane, who's a buddy of mine, we don't necessarily see eye to eye and all that other stuff. What he would say is that, like this, or like those mummies and stuff, like this is full disclosure if this stuff is real. So for a lot of people, not only does it threaten their worldview, but there's a lot of people in the UFO community that have a lot of you know, like this is a lot just for them to believe, but it also feels like I'm coming in and kind of cheapening their experiences, or coming in, swooping in and stealing the credit, whatever, you know. So there's a lot of like strong feelings that people have around a lot of this stuff. And I don't have any ill will towards any of those people at all. If you don't want to believe it, totally fine. I just want to go through the evidence with people so that people can come to their own opinions on it. Now, this is one of the craziest ones.
Totally agree.
So this is the color stripped thermal here, where somebody I think on social media stripped out the thermal so you could see the details a little bit better. And they've inverted it because we're looking from one angle here. This is the normal satellite angle, but the drone's on the other side, which means in order to get them to be in sync, you have to invert the thermal video the other way. So that's why it looks opposite. And then what you see here is, and I want to point this out, the plane here, we know the drone's somewhere up over here where my mouse is. We don't know exactly, but it's somewhere up there. And what you're going to see is that the cloud back here in this bottom right is most likely going to show up in the drone video when the plane goes past that area. And then you're going to see this cloud right here on the right afterwards, which this proves you're looking, if this is fake, it's a 3D rendered environment, because you've got the clouds in the same location in two videos. So there's the first, okay, so here we go. Let's do it one more time. There's the first cloud that we just went past right here. This first cloud right here is the cloud that you're seeing probably right here. And again, this is because it's an angle, and the drone is, we don't know the height of the drone, the altitude of the drone. It's probably not this close cloud here. And that's, again, because of the perception of the angles. We don't, it doesn't, it's hard to like kind of see that here. But most likely it's this cloud. And then you're seeing this second cloud here. And that's because the drone is stationary somewhere here, while this plane is kind of banking at an angle. So then the second cloud is right here. That at the end, the second cloud, pause, come on now. Yeah. So this cloud right here is the one that's right next to, right up here as well. So that's the strongest evidence, in my opinion, that what we're looking at here requires full 3D rendered environment. It's not something that somebody did a 2D thing. So nobody's ever refuted any of this evidence that's out there, which kind of goes to show that you know, the standards of evidence on both sides, unfortunately, are not consistent. You know, the debunkers just say, they try to poke one hole and say, this has been debunked. You see this a lot with debunkers in general. But I can do the same thing, just right back.
I mean, I'm personally not smart enough about VFX and all of that to push back, really. Like, I don't have anything to say, just because I just don't know enough about that stuff to say one way or the other, right? Like, could that be done? Could that not be done? I mean, the truth is, I have seen VFX artists say, nope, that could not be done in that time, and this and that, and then others say, yes, it could. It just goes to show It's just like doctors. They all got different opinions. And you know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's like you're just going to have to take
Well, I
in the
think people should
evidence
use their
and think
facts,
what you
right? I
want.
think that we don't, and this kind of goes to stuff is like whether or not we shouldn't base people on what their opinions are. Like, tell me the facts of how they did that. So, when people say,
Sure.
for
I mean, that's a
example,
good point. That's a good point.
especially for like the pyromania VFX debunk as well, is that give me the exact steps for how to convert it to the stock asset to what we see pixel by pixel, so that it's a 100%. If those are really the same thing, they must be perfectly matching in order to get it to look like that. What are the exact steps? Write them down so that if I follow those steps, they'll be exactly pixel perfect. Nobody does that. That would be actual factual evidence. It doesn't require talent or an expert. It just requires doing the work and proving the evidence. And this is kind of the debunk of that as well. We've seen that in the Killing Time video game. We've seen it in the Attack on Titan or advertisement they did. We've seen it in the movie Starship Troopers. In none of those have they ever modified it. They've never changed the color. They've never reduced frames from it, which would all this stuff that it was supposedly take. So if that's how it works, how come nobody actually does that? Why has nobody modified the Pyromania VFX to do that? Why has that never happened ever in any media before? And this is the type, again, just it doesn't take expert to know this, just basic critical thinking. So I want someone to show me a movie or a video game or whatever where someone took the Pyromania stock asset and they changed it in the same way that you're seeing MH370 videos. You can't, because it's never been done before.
You mean that asset specifically, or any asset, period?
That asset particularly, but sure, if somebody wants to say there's some other
People
asset where
definitely
they've done
take assets
manipulations.
and I mean, that's definitely what you do with assets a lot of times, right? You mess with them.
They didn't do that in Attack
No.
on Titan. They didn't do it in Killing Time, and they didn't do it in Starship Troopers. The whole point of stock assets, so you don't have to create something yourself. Now, you could argue they make
That's
some
true, but
modifications. I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
of course.
But
Like
in terms of
I go
that
buy
one, it's never been
tomatoes
done.
from the store. I bring them back and I prep them in the kitchen, right? We got to chop them up. We got to get them ready. We got to wash them. I'm gonna transform them somewhat. Maybe some of those studios were just like, dude, throw in the stock at. Let's save time here. We don't want any bullshit.
Also, and
whatever.
it's not really.
But
worth
I
it,
get
like,
your point too.
yeah. And again,
It's like
it's opinion stuff. It's not
oh,
worth digging into, right? Because everybody's got their own opinion. Opinions are like
totally.
assholes. Everybody's got them, right? The question is, what's the hard evidence? Show me the times where people have manipulated the Pyromania VFX, or if you want to say another similar one, that they've removed the frames and changed the color and changed the shape and all that. Show us that.
Yeah.
Or like I said before, the other bar is give me all of the exact steps, step by step, on how to get it to be an exact 100% pixel perfect match. If it is a match, it should be easy to do that. The exact step.
Yeah.
How many steps are there?
I don't think you need that personally for your investigation, like asking for that, if that makes sense. Like, even if they did, pixel perfect is a lot to ask, first of all. Like,
should it be?
For that
If you're
to
saying
be,
that that's the asset, that
well,
seems
we're
like a
10 years
minimum
later, it would be a hard, I don't know.
Should be
That
easier
seems
though, right?
hard. I don't know.
We have
Honestly,
even
I
more
don't know.
advanced.
I'm not an
things that we can
expert
do now.
on VFX stuff, to be honest with you.
But you're
to
right.
give
Like
a
for me,
proper answer.
I don't care either way at this, but this is what I'm
know.
saying. The whole point of bringing it up is like, this is what the bar should be for proving. Not, hey, I think that they modified this, therefore it's been debunked. Like, and you see this a lot. Like I just saw it earlier today. Mike Colangelo, he's one of these UFO influencers or whatever. I couldn't believe he posted this today. He said, just FYI, everybody, the Nazca mummies have been debunked. Some random anonymous Redditor claimed that it was goat parts and baby parts. There's no actual evidence listed. It's just literally someone's unsubstantiated.
Yeah, that was
claim.
Weird. I almost thought that was a joke that he tweeted.
I thought it was too at first.
Does that make sense? Because it seems
I thought
like
so too. Because like that's not.
Wait,
anyone can claim anything. Anyone,
Reddit. Like, yeah, Reddit. This Reddit user debunked it.
And it's just so weird to me. So yeah, that's the part where like I really wish we could set our standards higher, because there's other videos too. Like if these videos are real, this isn't the only stuff that's out there. The problem
is everyone's going to set their own standards, dude. That's just, and that's, you can't control that, bro. Yeah. Everyone's got their own standards for everything. What movies, what clothes, what apartment they're living, what luxuries they're willing to be with. Everyone's got the different lines in the sand they're going to draw, and that has to go with evidence. Some people are going to go, you know what, those videos look fake. I don't want to look in. I'm moving on with my life, and who gives an F, right? Like they just don't want to deal with it. They'd rather listen to some true crime podcast or get into the new season of Three Body whatever the thing is. And other people are going to go, you know what, that's interesting, and there's all these other things that you've uncovered, right? And so let me go in, and everyone's just going to have different levels for the VFX, the pixel perfect, like,
Absolutely.
so, dude, it's
And that's why, again, like,
crazy world
I'm
we
not
live
trying to
in.
convince everyone, but I do
No, for
want to just
sure.
open people's
But you've
minds
done
up
a
a little
great
bit.
job of presenting the
Yeah.
evidence well, dude. I got to admit, today in our interview, that you should be allowed to do that. You should be allowed to present your theory, your ideas, what you think is going on. And then people go, you know what? Yeah. Or no. Or, you know what? I'm looking more into that. Or, let me call my Aunt Susan. She's into this shit or whatever. I don't know anything about Aunt Susan. But anyway, look, let's move on to some questions real quick.
Yes, just more questions.
Gabriel the Explorer says, any guess on the limit this teleportation be used potential in space travel? Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it definitely could be used. I think that the way that it works, as we speculate, is there's a fourth orb. You've got it entangled. You need some steering
Correct.
wheel. Like, where is this going?
Yeah,
It's not.
totally.
We're just going into warp, but we don't know where we're going to show up. There's got to be some.
You need the
mechanism,
other
right?
end of the rubber
You need
band, right?
exactly. So the question, you could send this orb wherever you want. You can send it to the moon if you want. I think the problem is you're still in an airplane when you show up, and that airplane's not rated for space travel. So to me, that would be the limitation, probably.
We're on the moon, guys.
Reminds me of that South Park episode where they send Whalesiak out to the moon. So, like, he just dies on the moon. It's like, yeah, I mean,
dies.
if they find the plane on the moon, guys, that'll be absolute proof. I think MH370's on the moon.
Dude, how about when the eclipse happened? We see it, and we see MH that we see like flying there, like in the eclipse. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that the limitations, however, they can send another orb somewhere else. So that there could be limitations. And this kind of goes into UFOlogy, where people say, well, if there's UFOs that are here, they would be invincible. I actually think that it's like Superman. Everything has its weakness. And the weakness of anti-gravity technology like this is you can shoot a radar at it and possibly interfere with it and mess up their travel. And like we talked about this radar tech, like, I think if it's all based on scalar physics and radar, then all we have to do is shoot a scalar beam at this thing and it could just maybe crash. So who knows? Maybe that's why we've invested in advanced in radars, that maybe there are craft showing up and we can shoot them down with that. We're not shooting down conventional weapons. We're shooting them down with, radar waves or whatever, scalar waves.
Yeah, no, man. I mean, there's no question that we haven't figured out the limits of that technology. So that makes sense. This is Justin Zuyo or Zulo. Was this the technology that Miss Eskridge was working on? I don't know who that is.
Yeah, so Amy Eskridge was somebody who died. The official narrative is that she died by suicide in 2022. She was working on open source anti-gravitational, not open source, but let's say publicly researched anti-gravitational technology, which is really weird why she disappeared. Some people know Paklanov as well as Ning Li, who also were working with superconductors to potentially produce anti-gravity. And anti-gravity is a bit of a misnomer. Really what we're saying is to get a reverse force, a counter force to the gravitational force of the Earth so that you can float freely, essentially, and then control that and manipulate it to the point where you can just hover around and float around. And that's why there's so many conspiracies, because this video around her where she was with Jeremy Reese, an alien scientist, and Mark Sokol from Falcon Space, who I've actually interviewed Mark. And she's speaking freely. She's drunk, and she might also be on some painkillers or something. I'm just speculating there, but she was definitely drunk in the video. But she is just speaking freely about her experiences, talking about how some people want her to publish her, anti-gravity type papers, potentially like a unification theory paper, and other people are telling her that they're going to kill her. Like, literally, she says that. She talks about how they would get the information out, and she literally names Tucker Carlson as somebody that she would want to get the information out to because people trust him. And her and Mark sit there and riff back and forth about how do we get this out to the people, kind of like how we're having a discussion right now. And I think that, if you guys are listening, Pat and I we're cool, man. We're cool. We will sell out. We will sell out.
Oh, hang on, guys. I got to be around for my dogs. Okay, please.
Me
my
too.
wife,
Lulu
my family.
So, so it's a pretty, and she starts naming names of people too. That's the part where I think like she might have pushed the boundary a little too far, because she's like naming people like, I don't know the guy's name, but something like, and Josh, he's a huge douchebag and whatever. I'm going, oh boy, that's probably like some intel dude who's just like getting named on this podcast. But so here's my true opinion on the Amy stuff. I stopped looking into it. I'm going to tell you guys all right now. I partially stopped looking into it because I got some messages from people saying like, you probably shouldn't be looking into this. Like, this is going to get really dark. but I did look into it anyway. And I was told through various sources that she committed suicide with a gun, that went onto her front porch and committed suicide. I had looked at the videos of her. She was clearly in some psychological distress. Whether or not that's warranted or not, I leave it to you guys to determine. There's a video where she had like boarded up the windows and the doors in her house, and she said she was being attacked or whatever from directed energy weapons, and she like showed some rashes on her skin, stuff like that. Which I think, if you believe in the scalar physics stuff, is certainly possible. That's the scary part. But this again shows that when you know that there's magical technology out there that the public has no idea about, your mind can start racing, right? And this is the part where I start to be very careful about. I don't want to feel like I'm being targeted. If they want to take me out, they could do so easily. It wouldn't require a directed energy weapon. And I'm sure they could convince the world that I was suicidal or something, even though I'm not. But this is where you have to have a very strong mindset to talk about this technology and get it out there, assuming that it's true, because it can drive you nuts just thinking about what they're capable of, what they might do, and letting your imagination run wild with it. And that's why I think it's so important to have this mindset of like, if they want to take me out, then they take me out. So be it. I don't care. I'm just doing what I think is right. Because if you have that mindset to it, then you don't worry about those kinds of things. So then you don't seem paranoid and what have you. Because the moment you do start to seem paranoid, now they can develop a story of, oh, well, this person lost their mind and decided to end their own life or something like that.
Yeah. Plus, you're also like sort of a collection of your thoughts. Like if you start thinking that stuff, your life will start to become that as well, and you won't know where it's coming from.
I subscribe to that idea of you don't want to put those ideas out into the world as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't live your life in fear.
Yeah. Your life will be what you think it is in a lot of ways.
So I don't know what happened with her. Oh, go ahead.
No,
sorry. Oh, yeah. So I don't know what happened with her in general. It is pretty mysterious. I think I have heard that somebody pretty big is going to do a report on it in general. So if you do want to know more, I'll probably end up retweeting that, just because no matter what happened to her, it's a tragedy. She was like 35. She was a cute lady. She was super smart, obviously. She obviously had demons that she was battling, but no one deserves that in general, no matter how it played out. So, to me, I think, and this is what I've said, is that we should pick up where she left off. Like, let her spirit live on, and all of us who want to have disclosure, whether it be from advanced technology or UFOs or aliens or whatever it is, she still lives within us.
Yeah.
No, Pat, you rock. Ashton, you are so tech. Okay.
That's a legend.
For Pat there. Sweet.
Yeah, legend's a man. He's always leaving great comments. Great dude. Thank you so much, legend. Let's go to this real quick. Jim Lujan. Why teleportation? Maybe a limit.
Annihilation. I think we talked about this, I think, before, but it could absolutely be annihilation. It's just when you look at the videos and you see this orb circling around the plane, they're clearly doing something with a purpose there. And when you map it out, you see that they're going around the plane in a sphere, like in a perfect sphere almost. It looks like the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, where it's like mapping in this sphere. Yeah. So to me, it looks like they're planning for a type of event, as opposed to if it was annihilation, you just send the orbs, and I would expect it to just instantly.
You knew that word was annihilation?
It took me a while to figure it out. Well, it's elimination, but yes.
Okay, no, you're good. See, you're good at reading chat and figuring stuff out. You read chat; it's another language, right? Yeah, it's another language, man.
So I think that there's 99% or 98% chance, I'll say, that it's some type of warp. I think there's a 1% chance that it's annihilation and a 1% chance that it's some type of advanced cloaking. And I actually would argue that the difference between advanced cloaking and warping the object is very thin line as well. So, I don't know 100% certainty, but just based on the circumstantial evidence, and then the people where they claim they found the plane late or saw the plane later, and the fire suppression device, to me, that's the circumstantial evidence that says that, it was some type of superluminal event where they traveled somewhere else.
Sure. This is Justin Zulo again. It says there hasn't been a valid debunk of your hypothesis, and the truth will never be known. What is your next deep dive? Because I can't wait.
I'm deep diving into the science. I want to
Yeah.
know how the science works. I want to be able to understand it to the point where when I do interviews about this in the future, I can explain exactly what's happening with the science there. Now, I'm at the point now where I think strongly it's scalar physics. The Thomas Beard and stuff seems very credible to me. The idea that the equations, Maxwell's equations, were rewritten incorrectly, simplified too far, and that Tesla was potentially right going back 100 years. And then I don't know what after that. Like, to me, then I'm going to work on that until something else huge pops up. Like, I want to. Obviously, people said, "Why are you so passionate about this?" Passionate about it because I've never seen anything crazy like this in my life. I saw those two videos.
Yeah.
I'm like, "What the hell?" And I'm like, "If that's real, we can dig into it." So that's it's really kind of a perfect convergence of everything with those videos, the real world event, and all of that. And I'll probably look on little things here and there, but again, guys, I was like a normal guy. So I'm not somebody who's looking for every rabbit hole, trying to solve every problem in the whole world. I'm just trying to uncover stuff where I think that there is a mystery that can be solved and that we can do so with verifiable evidence.
Yeah. Awesome. Larry Quartowitz says, "Hey, Patrick and Ashton, I'm replay gang tonight, but looking forward to watching later. If I think of a question, I'll send it in." Well, we won't be able to answer it later. But yes, hashtag better
Maybe I'll
verse
reply in
united.
the comments
Yeah.
or something. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll zap the question in or the answer in. This is another one from Justin. Okay, it just says Ashton Patrick.
We're running, guys. We're running for president.
Oh God, yes. Let's do it.
Let's change this world, Pat. You and me, we got it.
Let's change this world. Justin again, he says, "Have you seen some of the remote viewers reporting on what happened to MH370?" Yeah, that's interesting. What have remote viewers said about this?
It's the thing about remote viewing is that it's kind of like you have to interpret it. So there's been some that have been close. I honestly have not dug too much into it. And it's not that I think that actually the funny part is the science that I've been kind of disclosing would give huge amounts of credit to remote viewing. If we have quantum teleportation, we can teleport an object. It really means that every point in space and time is hiddenly connected in this fifth dimension that we don't perceive, which then you can imagine how you could use your mind and theoretically connect to something that's remotely far away. The CIA takes this stuff seriously. So, but the part for me is that you guys, and this is what I always say about this, is that there's already way too much going on in these videos. So a lot of people want me to connect it to MH17. They want me to look into the remote viewing side of it. And I don't do that. Or like the aliens aspect to all this as well. It's like, there's already way too much for people to believe on this. So the more I add on to it, the more difficult it gets people to believe even the basic stuff. People don't even believe the science behind it, let alone the esoteric stuff and the other conspiracy angles. There's too much going on from a conspiracy side. This already blows people's minds that can the government even pull this type of conspiracy off? Can they control the media? It's already too much from the science side. Have we been getting lied to about science our whole lives? So I haven't dug too much into the remote view and stuff. I just know there have been people who've done it. I've had many people ask me, "Hey, do you want me to remote view the plane?" Blah, blah, blah. The answer is not really, because I've already got too much going on. And if I do that, people are going to start saying, "Oh, Ashton's a kook who's just believing all this esoteric stuff." Now, that might not true, but they will do that. People are literally using any attack vector to try to discredit me. So that's just whether or not that's sad or not. That's the reality of the situation.
No, that is true, and I've seen it with my own eyes. You are not paranoid there. All right, this is from RJN1313. How do you explain the proof of stock photo use presented by the photographer, the sky, and the clouds used as a background of the satellite video? Thanks, Patrick.
So I already kind of just spoke about this, but I do want to make sure I address every single thing that's out there. So first of all, there's no proof. The Wayback Machine on these pictures only goes back to 2016. Metadata is easily faked. If it's not easily faked, then we know the videos are real because we know that the plane went to Diego Garcia because we have the Philip Wood EXIF data picture. So there actually isn't.
What is this? I don't even know what this is about.
Oh,
I think we talked about this in our interview.
Yeah, maybe not.
Sorry.
So this was back from when Kim.com was supporting me, and we had come up with this $150,000 bounty that we needed someone to come forward claiming to have made the videos with the evidence, the work that they put into them to show us, because they're not going to have created this in one shot. They would have, added stuff to it, etc. Nobody ever came forward with any evidence related to that. But then what happened mysteriously was a 6-day-old Reddit account on the I call it the debunker subreddit out there, filled with debunkers. Mysterious anonymous 6-day-old Reddit account claimed that they found.
That's not suspicious.
Yeah, And both debunks. The first debunk, the VFX debunk, comes from a 1-day-old Reddit account. This one came from a 6-day-old Reddit account that claimed that they was just doing their Rain Man thing, looking on a website that has thousands and thousands of pictures, and they magically found this picture that has cloud assets. So if you reshape them and re-angle them, that they match our clouds from the MH370 video. So you would think, well, that person should come out then and be the debunker, but they didn't. They didn't want to tie themselves. They didn't want to say who they were. I actually got in touch with them and I said, I know you're lying about how you found these pictures. You didn't randomly look on some website in 20 minutes and catch them. They also claimed that they were upset that I like dunked on their corridor crew buddies. That everybody seems to be connected to the corridor crew for some reason. And so then instead, what did they do? They emailed the photographer, which, why are you emailing the photographer of the picture that you found? And the answer is because they wanted the photographer to put their name next to this debunk. And they told the photographer where to find the pictures on this website. The photographer couldn't even find the picture in question on the website. Even when they were staring at it in front of them, they couldn't even recognize the picture, which goes to show it's really weird that someone claims they found exact matching clouds. Because even when I was looking at the picture after it came up, I couldn't figure out which clouds matched where. It's like, that's not something that you can just do with your mind. It requires some analytical effort to dig into it. So right away, the story was very suspicious. And then the photographer, just that same night, after receiving an anonymous email from a burner email account from Just Thought You Should Know at proton.me. I know this because I have it recorded in my interview between him and Kim.com. He made a debunk video, 20-minute long debunk video where he's reshaping the clouds, matching them to the clouds and the thing. And I'm sitting here going, dude, like, why are you involving yourself in this? Like, you're putting your real name to this. This is like a cold case conspiracy that's out there. And you get a random email that's saying, hey, you took this picture, you should go debunk these videos. That's super weird. Especially when he's doing it that same night, not even waiting for the next day to find out any facts or evidence. I spoke to the guy. He wouldn't listen to any of the evidence that I presented whatsoever. He was sure that these must be fake, despite the fact the videos must be fake, despite the fact he had no idea at all about them. Or
this was the photographer of this pictures?
So the person who finds this picture then goes back into the wild. They never connect themselves to this ever again. Yeah. And they use this burner email account or burner Reddit account that was 6 days old. The images in question on the website had been modified.
I mean, maybe they were getting attacked online, so they felt like they needed to defend themselves or something. Like by debunking it or trying to debunk it. If that doesn't make sense,
I think that
I don't know.
I've been scammed. I've had in terms of people's psychological state around these videos, people are willing to literally fabricate fake evidence just to like keep their mindset and worldview intact.
Yeah,
that's the scary part.
No, that's not good for sure. For sure.
And so again, this is what you have to think of. But now so now we've got this picture out there. Now here's just the debunks related to it. The picture taker was offered $1,000 or $10,000 as a reward just for having taken the picture by Kim.com. He says in the interview he will accept it on contingent upon signing an affidavit that the pictures are real and that he really took them. He agrees at the time, and then the next day he's saying that he never agreed and he's not going to accept it. And then I just post the video of him agreeing, and then all hell.
10 grand. I mean,
10 grand on the spot?
Who are just like giving up 150 or 10 grand. Yeah, absolutely.
And Kim.com was going to give it to him right there. He's like, give me your wallet and your crypto wallet, and I'll send you the crypto right now.
Like right now.
And he's like, oh, I don't have one, and all this weird stuff. And he had his old passport ready. He had his old hard drive ready with all this stuff. It was a little too convenient. But now the forensic analysis was that the picture on the website had been updated like around the same time that the Reddit account was made. And this is not how databases work. When you do like an update to your system, it does not update all the elements in the database. I know because I work with databases my whole life. The picture did not reverse image search back to the website at all. It reversed it. Even now, we checked it recently. Reverse image search back to Reddit. It doesn't even reverse image search back to the website. So the story and also the picture taker told us, well, we asked to try to figure out who bought the pictures, whatever, to try to track it down, to figure out who the person might be. The picture taker said they're not the person who made the videos. And they said, well, the sites have been torrented. And so that the torrents, they might be out on a torrent. So we go look at the torrents. And we find multiple torrents from the old website going back to 2012 or whatever. They don't have the pictures in them. They're just not in there at all. So then I'm starting to realize, like, this is way too suspicious. It's really odd.
So random. This is so very random. Right? It's so random.
So the question here is, who would go to the lengths of hiding this, and who would have access to, let's say, a video in order to create a 2D picture that could be used as a debunk? Now, this is the part where, regardless of if this is a fabricated picture or not, this is a really good play. If somebody's trying to get these to go away, now my choice is either I've got to go through all this forensic analysis and what have you, and then I've got to say either this is real, or I've got to come out and say the CIA planted this picture back in 2016 and they're just breaking it out right now as their insurance card. And either of those ways, a lot of people are going to go, oh, this is too conspiratorial, blah, blah, blah. But the strongest evidence for being fake is the stuff we already went over. The flash is accurate in 3D. If the flash is accurate in 3D, this requires a 3D model to create, which rules out a 2D picture. You would have to create a whole 3D picture, not a 2D one. Sure. Also, we had the orb. The first orb punctures through the clouds. Especially in the high quality version, you can actually see the edges of the clouds evolve naturally, like get longer or shorter in the thin areas of the clouds. And this is only over like a 5-second video perspective. And then what I just showed as well, which is both videos have the same clouds in the same locations as the plane passes over it. Again, that requires a full 3D rendered environment, cannot be a 2D picture. So this is the thing. And if anyone refutes me, please present your evidence and your facts. So far, nobody has refuted this. People have given their opinions, but nobody has ever refuted it with any factual evidence. So this is the part where I think I've addressed enough right there. But I have, if you guys want, you can find the full. I did a whole debunk explainer of the cloud video on my YouTube channel, and I've done several posts about it. I think the big problem is that in this world of disinformation and misinformation, if you're explaining yourself, you're losing. It's all about pushing the idea out there and getting people to believe it without, and then nobody ever thinks of the counter argument side. So again, though, if you guys want to believe that it's a 2D picture, or you want to believe there's a Pyromania zap in there, that's totally fine. My final counter argument on that all would be that if these videos are fake, how come the story of what happened to the plane matches up with so much evidence, including the coordinates that weren't even known at the time when these videos were published? How come that matches up with real witnesses and a mayday of a plane disintegrating, attempting an emergency landing? How come the science turns out that it's out there and is real, and that we've got a guy from 1985 talking about scalar interferometry that can be used to pump mass out of a location, which is basically the same as teleportation? How is all this stuff out there? Like, to me, the only way that this stuff can all be out there is that these videos are real and we actually do have this crazy advanced technology. But I leave it to the audience to come to their own conclusions.
Oh, man. Look, I think we'll go another 5 minutes here and end it at 9. What do you think there, Ashton?
Yeah, I think that would be good. We've answered a lot, but this has been really fun.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see the point in really doing any more questions. Just if you have something else to say, I'm gonna, I'll read some other chats here. If you see something, thank you to Christine Rip. No question, just sending support. Thank you to the mods for just crushing it tonight. Thank y'all so much. Man, I swear I have the best mods in the community. They're absolutely amazing. So thank y'all so much to them for running the chat tonight. Thank you for everyone that came tonight and asked Ashton a lot of great questions. I really appreciate that. And thank you to Ashton, man, just for stepping up and taking all these questions and talking. And this was great, man. I love talking about this stuff. To be honest with you, you did a great job.
Let me hit a few other questions that I had from earlier on.
Go for it.
Could the plane have got warped underwater? It's possible. Like with inertial mass reduction, you can set the plane down somewhere. But my personal opinion is that it actually just teleported somewhere else in the sky and kept flying. I don't have any proof of that. Obviously, it's just more of that circumstantial evidence regarding it.
Oh, okay.
Will we get proof of UAPs? I don't think the government's ever going to get. The people that think the government's going to at some point in the future say, oh, yeah, guys, we've had aliens and UFOs visiting us and we've been covering it up for 80 years. You're going to forgive us? That's ever going to happen, sadly. Ashton, have you played Yahtzee since the whole debacle started? No, I haven't. Although that's my favorite. That's my buzzword is Yahtzee. Whenever we find something that's like super compelling, I yell Yahtzee. People said, have you reached out to the corridor crew in response to the debunking video? No. And I don't think I think they care for me about as much as I care for them, which is not very much at all. And then somebody asks if the warping's real, what's the reason? We talked about the reason, but is it man-made or non-human intelligence? Early on, I thought it was non-human intelligence, but I think that there's enough evidence to show that this is our tech, but I don't know that we found it out ourselves. This could go back 80 years. This could go back to Roswell. When you look at tech that is this advanced, you think we must have seen it and then reverse engineered it. That's still, I think, my opinion, but I'm undecided. I think there's many different answers for how it could be explained, including that we just uncovered this like during the Manhattan Project, and we've been using aliens as a distraction to get people to not think it's real. So anything is possible, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, has the
That's
government
great, man.
reached out to you? No, they haven't. But truth between all of us is I kind of wish they would, because I do not like disclosing information about my own government. I don't like disclosing the surveillance
Sure.
technology. If this stuff is real, then I am literally giving away secrets to foreign adversaries. Now, maybe they're like the debunkers and they don't believe it's real, and then it's not a big problem. But I have a feeling that China and Russia take this stuff very seriously. And I think this is where the idea of hypersonics comes from. I think that we use words like drones and hypersonics, and if you were to like
You
look
think
at that
Russia
kind
and
of stuff.
China is watching you? What do you think?
Yeah,
They're
honestly,
watching
I'm
you?
more afraid of them than I am of the United States, because I think that they would be afraid that I would go work for the United States, or maybe I am covertly, and that I could be a threat to foreign nations. Because if I can figure this out from these videos, let's imagine we have other videos of Russia doing stuff. Like, imagine how much stuff I could figure out from the other incidents out there. So I'm actually more afraid of foreign agencies than I am my own government at this point. But again, I try not to be too afraid of anything. I just figure, whatever happens
Yeah,
is going to happen.
100%.
That's a really good question.
Yeah. Well, could MH370 be the reason why countries in Asia are so dead quiet on UAP?
Could be. Could be.
That's
I,
interesting.
I think, yeah, at the end of the day, I think that everybody's quiet about it because they're all trying to reverse engineer it. And because
Yeah.
whoever has the UAP technology, quote, quote, has military supremacy of the planet. This is magical technology, essentially. And this is the big thing, is it's much more than just propulsion, that propulsionless propulsion. This is about a weapon that can be developed from this type of technology. Think of like when we were racing during the Manhattan Project to figure out the nuclear bomb. This is like
Yes.
that all over again. So everyone wants to be tight-lipped about what they know and how much they know in general. And this is
Sure.
part of the reason why, too, I think that every government in the world's been mostly keeping it hidden. But I think some people speak about it more freely than others. Like when Putin's talking about hypersonics, I think that that's kind of like a dog whistle saying like UFOs essentially and stuff like that. Is the hypersonics, like that is considered magical technology, but people talk about it openly. So yeah,
Well,
great
that's a fair
questions on
point,
this
man.
chat today.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great questions for sure. All right. Well, I don't know. Any last comments, Ashton? What do you think?
I just want to thank you, Pat. We've had some awesome conversations. I love that you kind of considered it like the replacement Rogan interview, because I feel like it did play out that way when we were talking through it. And I love that we had this after space kind of situation where we could talk
Yeah.
through all the various concerns, either from people who are skeptics and from people who are believers, and people just want to know more information. If you guys really want to know more, the best way is to go to my pinned tweet on my profile at JustXAsh, and you see the thing right down here. And you'll see my story of espionage. I've tried to really summarize this stuff as short as possible because people don't have really big attention spans, just to give you guys the highlights. But in the reply, you can find the all evidence list, which is like 14 pages long. I don't even have links to everything in the all evidence list because it's so long, but everything you see in that list is either stuff we've deduced from the videos, other my reporting that's out there on Twitter, or stuff that's like old news articles that are out there that you can just Google yourself and confirm all those pieces of evidence. So if you really want to jump down the rabbit hole, checking out that evidence list is probably your best bet.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. No, that's a great way to end there. Yeah, thank you to everyone that watched, all Ashton's fans that came over, all the vetters there. Please go check out Ashton's YouTube as well, his Twitter. I'll make sure to add that to the description. I don't think I did that yet. And yeah, just thank you guys for joining us on our very first vetted after hours live stream. I don't know what to call it.
That's a good thing. Like
after vetted. I don't know what's going on here. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much, Ashton. Did a great job, dude. It's great having you here. Look forward to more conversations about more things, just talking about different stuff, right? For sure.
You should do more long form content like that as well. I can, maybe throw some ideas of people out there, because I think you're a good interviewer. Just to have casual conversations with people. So love your work, man.
For sure. Thank you, man, so much. All right, guys. Y'all have a good rest of the evening. Remember, there's some balloons for you. And thank you again to the mods. Remember, every day's a gift. We'll see you later, guys. Okay.